The day started quite well, and loud voices of children could be heard everywhere, until an event occurred that Iris would remember for the rest of her life. Upon opening her eyes, the girl couldn't understand why she was underwater and how she could return to the shore. She was just trying to help her friend, who fell into the lake first. She didn't want to end her life in such a senseless way, but there was almost no oxygen left in her lungs. A moment later, she saw her friend's face, who was horrified and trying to wake up the rescued girl. Iris was almost exhausted, but the children from the shelter managed to pull her out from under the water. Her head hurt terribly, as after submerging in the lake, the girl lost consciousness. Hugging her best friend, Jess begged her to forgive her, because she was to blame for everything that had happened. Trying to calm her down a bit, Iris assured her that everything was in the past and that there was no point in shedding tears in vain. Miss Haley believed that everything would be fine and advised them to get some good rest upon returning to the shelter. The place where the orphans lived was a sanctuary created with the support of the Hylas Temple. The girl warned that next time she should think about her own safety, although her actions deserved respect. In response, Iris happily promised to do better, hoping the orphanage director wouldn't find out about the incident. She was a normal 13-year-old girl who loved to play with her friends. But on the threshold of death, memories suddenly returned to her, revealing the whole truth about this world. In fact, this world was the plot of a book that Iris read in a past life. In the novel, which had now become a reality for her, all the characters died at the hands of the protagonist, and even Iris herself, who got along with everyone, became a victim of this cruel man. The protagonist acted as an antagonist and was someone to stay away from. That same black-haired boy was quite famous and symbolized the image of the devil. From a young age, he was distinguished by his red eyes, as if they were filled with blood. Turning around, she saw in the distance the same boy named Theo, who was the cruel hero of the novel. The novel said he killed everyone in the orphanage before even reaching adulthood. This was his revenge for the fact that everyone around him constantly made fun of him, calling him the son of the devil. Iris never thought about it, but she too will have to share the same fate as all the other children at the orphanage. After what happened, she tried to find a way to survive, deciding to study the necessary literature. She noticed she had a strange book about nature in her hands. Her friend couldn't understand why Iris was interested in something like that. Approaching her, Evelyn asked her why she was reading such complex books instead of ordinary novels. In response, the girl explained that a person's opinion in childhood has a great influence on them. However, she didn't understand why she started combining books about people with books about the animal world. Iris believed that any knowledge would be useful in the future, and one should always be prepared. Deciding not to disturb her, Evelyn quickly said goodbye, hoping her new hobby wouldn't take up all her free time. Reading every line, the girl began to understand that killers always act consistently. Theo's first murder was related to the orphanage, but everything in this world must have a reason. Realizing something very important, Iris abruptly closed the book, knowing it was time to act. From that moment on, she decided to undertake a project to correct the villain, since her own destiny depended on it. They lived in the same house, but today the girl didn't see him even once during the whole day of searching. At some point, it even seemed as if he was hiding on purpose, having guessed her intentions. After walking a few more steps, Iris stopped abruptly, trying to recall memories from the past. Having decided to look for him in dark and secluded places, the girl was glad there weren't many such places. The first thing she did was go to a place where there are usually no children and where there is always a graveyard silence. This is where Theo was, preferring to isolate himself from the world and live in complete solitude. The girl approached him cheerfully and said his name, hoping he would do the same in return. However, instead of greeting her, the boy ordered her to get out of there if Iris didn't want to get into trouble. Realizing that she wasn't welcome, she quickly changed direction, saying that she had been running in a completely different direction. At first, she was just going to talk to Theo, but then she realized she needed another way to connect. She was very scared to hear such threats, so Iris followed the order without delay. However, a little later, she decided to do something a little different, taking the ball with her. And returning. Running past where Theo was, the girl seemed to accidentally throw the ball into the open door. Then she rushed to retrieve it, hoping that simple excuse would help her become friends with the boy. The ball rolled to his feet, although Theo remained in the same spot and didn't even move. The girl took the ball in her hands and said with a smile that such an encounter certainly couldn't be considered casual. She tried to convince him that she was quite friendly and didn't want to insult him with offensive words. Theo was surprised, because before, no one wanted to get to know him, and he only heard vile insults from the children. She offered to play together and held the ball in her hands, thinking she could win him over. However, he had no intention of playing with her, and pressed so hard that the ball deflated before her eyes. As she thought, this boy turned out to be quite scary, and making friends with Theo wouldn't be so easy. Realizing that they wouldn't give her peace there, she started to get up slowly, wanting to leave that place. Addressing Iris, the boy said that he was not an animal that could be seen as such in a zoo. Instead of reciprocating the friendship, he started to loudly threaten to gut the girl right at that moment. She could barely contain her emotions from fear, fearing that those threats would become reality. Only now, looking directly into his eyes, she suddenly realized that there was a little demon hidden inside Theo. To prove it, the boy grabbed her by her clothes roughly, intending to teach her a valuable lesson. At that moment, other children from the orphanage passed by and noticed how Theo dared to raise his hand against the girl. Theo didn't stay out of it, and said he could wipe the smiles off everyone's faces. Hearing this, William couldn't believe that his little devil had become so bold. The girl understood that if everything continued in the same spirit, the plot of the novel could repeat itself before her eyes. William declared aloud that people like Theo should be killed at birth, and not become a danger to others. He continued to shower him with hurtful words, mentioning the parents who abandoned the child to his fate. Seeing this, Iris didn't understand why they allowed themselves to make such vile insults towards Theo. Deciding she had to act, the girl wanted to show him that not all children were so evil. Like everyone else, she used to be very afraid of Theo. She preferred not to be near and avoid meetings. Throughout all this time, she considered him a monster, without even thinking about who that boy really was. Thinking about this, Iris wondered how she was different from the other children in the orphanage. The bullying of Theo had long since become completely routine, and no one even tried to stop it. This was the main reason for his withdrawal from the world, after which he decided to take cruel revenge. In other words, if she wants to change this boy, she must first change herself. Realizing this, the girl changed her original goal and now intended to act differently. The first step had to be taken right now, and Iris didn't want to stay in her hiding place any longer. Running towards the children, the girl approached the main instigator of the dispute, who was always William. She acted quite bravely, although she understood that after what happened, they could spread bad gossip. Surprised by the unexpected encounter, William asked her what she was doing there and why she was spending time with Theo. In response, the girl suddenly called them cowardly brats who couldn't even articulate a couple of words. Addressing William, she reminded him that in any situation, he always resorts to disgusting insults. William warned that she was protecting the wrong person and didn't know who Theo really was. Instead of answering, the girl roughly grabbed his finger, preventing him from continuing his caustic insults. Iris insisted that Theo was her best friend, and she wouldn't allow anyone to speak about him in that tone. No one could believe that a little angel like her could be friends with a flesh monster and bone. But if they dared to point fingers and make fun of Theo again, she threatened to respond in the same way. Her behavior was really strange, and William had never seen the girl so angry. They were sure that Theo was to blame for everything, having turned their good friend into the very same demon. Seeing them leave, Iris knew that after today's incident, rumors would spread throughout the shelter. But without regretting it at all, she asked for forgiveness for these children who still don't understand anything. Furthermore, the girl asked for forgiveness for herself, since she had never tried to get to know him. She admitted that she had long dreamed of becoming friends with him, and that today's meeting was an excellent opportunity to do so. By extending her hand to him, Iris hoped that her action would help break the barrier that had been built between him and the outside world. Suddenly, he replied that she was right to be afraid of him and ordered her to get out of there immediately. These words resonated with her because she had done so much to earn his trust. Having said that, Theo continued by assuring her that next time he would rip all the hair off her head. At first, she thought it was the perfect time to get to know each other, but in reality, everything was different. According to the logic of all the stories Iris had read, they should have become friends by now. Determined not to give up, the girl was ready for a second attempt, since nothing worked the first time. She was never one of those children who feared difficulties and deviated from the planned path. The next day, she brought with her something that Theo would supposedly like. After reading the story from beginning to end, Iris happily declared that the characters became best friends in the end. Addressing him, the girl assured him that this happens not only in books, but also in everyday life. She apologized for being too emotional, but those stories always touched her soul. After hearing this, Theo again ordered her to get out of there before he tore her skin off. The girl expected a completely different reaction and didn't know that he didn't like stories from books. The next time she brought a cake and realized that reading the book seemed boring. Iris could share it if there is someone here who also likes eating cakes. Realizing that they wouldn't leave him alone, Theo finally lost his temper and ordered them to leave him alone. The reaction was the most terrible, and the girl immediately followed the order. The next second, she was already running towards the exit, not wanting to become Theo's first victim. That same night, when the moon sank into the sky, the girl decided to use a forbidden technique. It is known that every boy will always help a girl if something bad happens to her. After waiting for him to come out, Iris found herself by his side again, as if by accident. Right in front of his face, she tripped over a stone that was lying there and asked him to help her stand up. For a while, Theo watched her strange behavior in silence, not understanding what that whole circus was about. To prevent this from happening again, he placed his foot directly on her back and continued his way. While watching him leave, she could barely imagine how else she could earn that boy's trust. However, there were some successes, because now Theo at least didn't pounce on her with rude expressions. The next day, the girl returned to the barracks where he always spent his time. Iris asked him how he knew about that place, which seemed made for playing hide-and-seek. She also liked those types of places, although she didn't advise staying away from people for a long time. In response, Theo said he had been specifically looking for the exact place where he could hide from prying eyes. Turning abruptly towards him, she suddenly realized that his mood was a little different today. He behaved with great restraint, although he still didn't utter a single unnecessary word. Iris tried to act as calmly as possible, otherwise he would close himself back up in his cocoon. With her words, she could ruin everything, and the girl tried not to speak without thinking it through well. This time the boy spoke first, saying that only those who needed to hide came here. Looking him directly in the eyes, she felt a little uncomfortable at some point due to his scary appearance. Trying not to show her fear, she noticed that constantly running away from people seemed absurd. He was no different from the other children, so it was necessary to find a common language with all the children in the orphanage. The girl explained that these are simply the standards that people set for themselves. A man creates his own destiny, and Iris was willing to help a little if necessary. The girl happily declared that one's personal opinion is much more important, and not the opinion of strangers. In the Latra's empire, where she was born, there was a myth about the founding of the state, at whose origin was a good goddess. Besides her, there was another deity who tried to destroy everything created on the planet. Superstition held that the future demon would have black hair and red eyes, which led to poor Theo being compared to this creature. As a result, the boy lost track of who he really was. Iris advised him not to believe those inventions, but he didn't understand how she could be sure of it. He said that the standards could be true, and therefore he could really be a demon. Suddenly, a loud sound was heard from behind, as if someone were hitting the walls of a wooden barracks directly. Turning around, the girl heard familiar childish voices shouting something incomprehensible. In fact, they gathered around the building and started destroying it with an unknown purpose. The kids were so absorbed that they seemed to have forgotten that there could be people inside the barracks. Running towards the entrance, she saw the same William, who was the main instigator. He claimed that this place must be destroyed because it is the lair of a dangerous creature. At that moment, Iris realized that their stupid fun could end in their own death. This time, things went really wrong, because if the building had collapsed, she wouldn't have had time to run to a safe distance. The moment the building started to collapse, someone appeared nearby from whom the girl didn't expect help. Protecting her with his body, Theo quickly threw her to a safer place, located further from the barracks. A little more, and the rubble would have fallen on her head, but he decided not to stay on the sidelines. Theo acted very nobly, because he himself could have accidentally tripped, and ended up under the rubble of the building. After a while, the barracks were completely destroyed, and the children were looking at it from afar. Their bodies were covered in recent abrasions, but the boy managed to save 2 lives at once. Having regained his senses a little, he started to get up slowly, trying not to make movements that were too sudden. At the moment of the fall, the boy was the one who suffered the most and hit the ground with his face with all his might. Realizing he was in great pain, Iris couldn't hold back tears as she apologized for the horror. She touched him, trying to calm him down a bit, although Theo said he was fine. At that moment, a loud voice was heard behind them, and the children suddenly turned in that direction. It turned out that the director had already found out about everything and had run to the place where the old barracks had been destroyed. Addressing the children, she demanded to know what had happened and who was responsible for the collapse. In response, Iris claimed that they had nothing to do with it and that the other children, led by William, were to blame for everything. Seeing how much the girl was trying to protect them, Theo felt like calming her down for the first time. At some point, he thought she might misunderstand and decided to pull his hand back. He really wanted to say a few words, but he wasn't used to communicating with people. After a while, they gathered in the director's office, and Iris declared that this was too unfair. Not understanding what she meant, the director tried to find out exactly what it was that the girl considered dishonest. Iris continued to insist that William and his friends were to blame for everything and, therefore, they should be punished. In response, the woman reminded them that it was her and Theo who entered that closed house without permission. Thus, from the beginning, they exposed themselves to serious danger because the house was too deteriorated. Unable to stand such nonsense, Iris said it was William who first destroyed the building. Looking at Theo, the girl supposed that the director also considered him a true little demon. Throughout all this time, the boy remained silent, meekly enduring the director's humiliating punishment. However, something changed in his behavior, and he no longer wanted to start an open argument. Approaching the girl a little more, the woman told all the children to lower their hands. Then she leaned towards Iris, intending to tell her some very important information in a low voice. She said that she always got along with her friends and didn't understand what had happened recently. She understood the hint and replied that she had simply done what every normal person was obligated to do. Putting her hand on her shoulder, the woman prepared to say something that the girl hadn't yet had time to understand. She was sure that Theo simply liked her, but she didn't advise her to communicate with this boy. The director considered her an exceptional child who had no place among children like Theo. While talking about this, the woman seemed not to understand that the boy was listening to every word. Being very close, having chosen the right moment, she ran quickly towards the exit, hoping never to meet there again. At the last moment, the woman ordered to stop, as she had never let anyone go before. Using the cable, Iris ran after him, not wanting to leave him alone again. The director insisted on her own, and quickly stopped the girl right at the threshold of the office. With a smile on her face, she said she should forget about that ill-mannered boy. In response, the girl reminded her that the director shouldn't behave that way with children. She wanted to see an adult in front of her, but she herself behaved like a child. Looking at the other children, Iris understood perfectly well where all those rumors about Theo came from. These children only seemed kind and harmless, but in reality, they completely ruined his life. She didn't want to stay there and said that adults shouldn't behave like children. The woman had never heard such words come out of the lips of such a small child. In the end, Iris shouted that Theo's actions saved her life and that he deserved nothing but respect. A short time later, she went to the doctor's office to have her wounds checked. Upon opening the door, the girl saw Miss Haley at the desk, who had been waiting for her there for a long time. The girl turned around and asked what had happened this time and which of the children had fallen into the lake again. Seeing that her whole body was covered in recent abrasions, Miss Haley got even more scared. The girl asked for a first aid kit for a friend, saying the only thing she needed was hydrogen peroxide and a clean bandage. In response, the girl offered her help if any of the students needed an urgent bandage. Suddenly, she demanded loudly that she not do it, assuring her that she herself could take care of bandaging the abrasion. At that moment she realized she had said it too loudly and had drawn too much attention. She couldn't bring him now, but she asked her to give her all the necessary medicines. Iris always trusted Miss Haley, but she also understood that Theo wouldn't accept communicating with an adult. Opening the first aid kit, the girl warned that the wounds could be much more serious, so the patient had to be brought here. Having said that, she handed her the entire first aid kit, hoping the available medicines would be enough. Finally, the girl decided to ask where Miss Haley would go if she wanted to hide safely. After thinking for a moment, The girl said she would go to the cave located behind the hill behind the shelter. She didn't understand why they were asking her that question, but warned that being in the cave could be dangerous. Miss Haley had rarely been in that forest, but it was undoubtedly the place she would have gone if she had wanted some privacy. Thanking her for her help, Iris promised to be careful if she decided to go to that place. That same night, the girl headed there, realizing that Theo must be in the forest. His previous shelter was completely destroyed, but the boy wouldn't return to the orphanage. She understood that at that moment he was in great pain, especially after the words he heard from the director. It's strange that people are so eager to offend him, as if he had done something bad to them. When she arrived at the entrance of the cave, she saw footprints that clearly indicated Theo's presence. There were traces of blood everywhere, and they led to the depths of the cave where the boy was hiding. At first, she was afraid to enter that place, because besides the two of them, there wasn't a single soul around. Gathering her thoughts, she slowly took the first step, intending to overcome her fear. Iris did this only to help him, and decided to carry it through to the end without stopping halfway. After walking a few steps, she noticed in the distance a boy sitting near the cave rock. Theo noticed her quite quickly, although he didn't expect her to dare to take such a bold action. His face was still covered, with bruises and tears were streaming from his eyes, but it was he who saved her life. Looking at Theo, the girl realized that all this time he had been crying alone. While sitting in a dark cave, Iris became the only person who could help him and decided not to delay in providing this help. Approaching him, she asked if he remembered her opinion about those erroneous standards. The girl admitted that the standards might be correct, but she herself believes too much in Theo. Having said that, she began to slowly clean his face, although he was surprised by such a confession. Just like at the beginning of their relationship, she gave him a radiant smile, not doubting her decision at all. For the first time in his life, the boy felt so much care and could barely contain his emotions of excitement. The girl believed that the devil would not save a person, that's why the children lie, calling him the son of Satan. In her opinion, many people always make up all sorts of stupid things without realizing how funny they are. In response, the boy warned her that if she stayed close, they would also start calling her different names. He believed that she would also be cursed, and advised her not to spend too much time together. After listening to his words, Iris decided to ask him something very important, asking him not to get offended. Looking him directly in the eyes, she asked if he was the demon the children had called him. She was willing to accept him no matter what, even if Theo really had any connection with demonic entities. At first, the boy started behaving quite aggressively, almost saying rude things in response. However, he then said in a low voice that he had never been a demon, and that all that talk was complete nonsense. Hearing this, Iris decided to calm him down a bit, promising him that she would always believe his words. Even if everyone in the world called him a devil, she swore to always be by his side. It took a little while to heal the abrasions, but after half an hour everything was ready. She tried to do everything as Miss Haley had ordered her, firmly covering the wound with a new bandage. The girl was doing this for the first time and was a little worried that she might do it too clumsily the first time. However, looking at Theo, she declared that the bandage had come out perfect and that he could now rest a little. The boy had some doubts that everything was exactly like that, but decided to trust his friend completely. Finally, she warned that there was only one important thing left to do. After asking him to get a little closer, Iris decided to do something that from now on only he would know. She closed her eyes and mentally said a few words, after which a bright light turned on in the dark cave. Theo couldn't believe his eyes, but what was happening really seemed like real magic. He demanded an explanation of what this meant and why Iris had performed that unusual trick. In response, she said that the treatment of the abrasions was already completely finished, and that they would heal much faster. In that same second, he felt something strange, as if the wounds on his body were starting to heal on their own. It seemed to him that after casting the spell, the pain began to diminish immediately, and the bandages were no longer necessary. After examining his body, the boy noticed that other abrasions on his arms and legs had become almost invisible. This is exactly the effect Iris wanted to achieve, saying it was her little secret. The boy really liked this effect, and for the first time a sincere smile appeared on his face. After this, she suggested returning, reminding them that Miss Haley had told them to make sure to show her the patient. By offering him her hand, she hoped that after everything that had happened, he would trust her much more. Previously, Theo would never have accepted something like that, considering that medical supervision was completely unnecessary. But now he actually acted differently, offering his hand in return and agreeing to go to the shelter. Noticing her rather strange look, the boy asked her why she started looking at him that way. At that moment, Iris declared aloud that for the first time in a long time she was truly happy. This confession was the most unexpected, because helping other people made her a happy person. He himself thanked her for her help, so Iris decided that from that moment on they would be friends. Hearing this, the boy did not respond, although anyone else in his place would have accepted to become friends. He turned around abruptly and declared that a few simple words of gratitude meant nothing. Demanding an explanation, Iris reminded him that he was behaving incorrectly and that he was not showing gratitude at all. She decided not to back down until he said aloud that they had become true friends. Instead of that, Theo asked her to move away, pushing her slightly to the side. The boy believed that friendship should be something completely different, and, having put a bandage on him, she had no right to consider him a friend. The last words seemed especially offensive to her, as if someone else was speaking through him again. Trying to reach him, the girl demanded that he stop and tell her what she deserved. After a while, they arrived at the shelter and headed to Miss Haley's office. After examining the patient, the girl was surprised because the wounds, which were quite deep, healed too fast. She was sure that such abrasions take much longer to heal, and it was the first time she had encountered such a case. Miss Haley believed that the boy had excellent genetics, because that was the only thing that could explain this miracle. Hearing her words, Theo understood that something amazing had indeed happened in the cave that night. He really didn't like being different from others, although what happened again made Theo stand out from the rest of the students. Turning towards him, Iris reminded him that the wounds had healed so quickly only thanks to her help. She asked him to never forget this, because only true friends can do this. He had no choice but to accept this, although he didn't like being told what to do. Judging by his reaction, he intended to continue ignoring those words when it came to friendship. However, deep down, Theo knew that she really only wanted what was best for him. The next day at the shelter, there was a lot of talk and no one understood why they were walking together. Until a while ago, Theo had been acting like a loner, but now he never left Iris's side. Trying not to pay attention to it, they behaved as if they didn't notice the other's gazes at all. After sitting down, the girl wished him bon appetit, reminding him of their last conversation. She demanded that he forget forever those who wish him harm and try to irritate him. Despite this, Theo replied that she shouldn't be near him, otherwise she would soon regret it. He slammed his fists on the table and declared that no one cared who was eating next to him. The only thing that mattered to the other children was that Theo was still a demon, something they sincerely believed. Little by little, Iris began to get used to his doubts and was ready to give him her answer. Turning towards him, she asked again if Theo considered the person closest to him at that moment a friend. The boy, who didn't want to give in, refused again, asking not to ask any more stupid questions. However, she was sure that one day they would definitely become friends. It was just a matter of time. Hearing this, Theo turned to her and told her that she had been acting very strangely lately. The boy spoke of this as if he had forgotten about the help, and was now scolding the girl for her bad behavior. Still not understanding what he was hinting at, Iris asked him to talk about everything aloud, without making that facial expression. After thinking for a bit, he stated that she had started communicating much more with him, although before he simply hadn't noticed. Instead of responding, the girl decided to treat him to a tasty sausage, because that was the only way to end all that nonsense. Putting a sausage in his mouth, she said that he thinks much better with a full stomach. They started behaving quite noisily, and their loud childish voices could be heard throughout the buffet. When Iris picked up her food tray, she thought she had been too careless, and that perhaps she had let something slip. She should be more careful so that her new friend can't guess the memories of the past. At that moment, someone's voice was heard nearby. One of the students asked for help out loud. Paralyzed in place, the girl tried to understand what had happened on the street, and why all the children had run out of the buffet. It turned out that many children had gathered near the shelter and were simply watching from the sidelines. They didn't dare to enter into conflict because they themselves could be caught in the crossfire. Throughout all this time, Theo held the boy silently by the neck, moving his hand in his direction. Looking him in the eyes, he warned him that he was at risk of dying right now in front of his friends. It was clear from his face that Theo wasn't joking, and didn't want to endure endless humiliation anymore. Noticing this, Iris ran towards him with a shout, begging him to stop and not do something irreparable. Taking his hand, she told him that an inevitable punishment awaited him for this act. The boy no longer hid his fear and was willing to apologize at least 100 times if Theo forgave him. The girl didn't know all the details of the argument, but said it was a big mistake. Turning abruptly towards her, the boy suddenly realized that he should listen to her advice. He finally let him go because he didn't want to cause bloodshed in front of his girlfriend. Still holding Theo, he gave the boy the chance to leave the place while he was under control. Looking at her, he didn't understand why Iris decided to protect the insolent man and what she really knew. To quickly get out of that place, the girl suggested running into the forest, where they could talk about everything calmly. Without wasting time, she dragged him along, and within 10 minutes they were running along a forest path. For a long time, Theo was tormented by doubts, because she treated that boy as if he were his true friend. Turning around, he asked aloud what had caused the fight and why he had grabbed him. Theo admitted angrily that he had started insulting him again, as if he had forgotten who he was dealing with. But most importantly, that student also insulted Iris, after which Theo decided to take revenge for these words. The girl was glad that he was now starting to treat her like a true friend, since he had decided to defend her. Hugging Theo, she thanked him aloud, although she understood that unnecessary fights no longer served any purpose. She said she perfectly understood how he felt when he wanted to defend his best friend. In response, he pushed her away quickly and reminded her that she had misunderstood the reason for the fight. Without realizing it, she hugged him accidentally, after which she had to apologize at length to Theo. Looking at the boy, she decided to remind him of something important, trying to talk about it as gently as possible. Iris was grateful, but she didn't want Theo to be so rude to all the other children. Hearing this, he suddenly realized that the girl just wanted him to treat people a little more kindly. This was exactly what Iris was trying to tell him, because she didn't want him to suffer from a misunderstanding. After thinking for a moment, he realized that Iris really wanted the best for him and had taken him to the forest for his safety. He suddenly promised to listen to her advice and not fight anymore, even if he heard insults. It was the best response that could be heard, and the girl was happy that he understood everything. From the outside, it seemed quite funny, although Theo only needed to say a few words. She hoped that now he would stop asking stupid questions about whether he was a human or a demon. The next second, his gaze changed dramatically, as if something demonic had flashed in his eyes. However, his expression was like that of a man who was planning to kill someone. Iris sincerely wished that one day he could play with other children without caring about the opinions of others. To begin with, she suggested relaxing his eyes a little. Otherwise, they would scare all the students. With his intense gaze, he looked a lot like some kind of serial killer or maniac. Not understanding what was wrong with his eyes, the boy promised to think about it. Determined to try to change his gaze, he made his first attempt by asking if his gaze had become less bloodthirsty. Iris thanked him aloud for his efforts, but she wanted to say something a little different. It wasn't as bad as Theo thought, but his gaze was still intense. By observing his face more closely, she realized that the whole problem could be in one important detail. If you slightly change his hairstyle, his appearance will change immediately, and the boy's face will become kinder. Lost in her thoughts, Iris began to think about how she could help in this situation. Suddenly, the girl asked him how much he trusted her, and if he was ready for a little experiment. Realizing that he wouldn't object, she quickly grabbed his hand and told him not to resist. After a short time, they entered the house, and the girl decided to play the role of personal hairdresser for a while. Taking the scissors, she was going to cut his hair, shortening the locks and making the boy cuter. Theo turned to her and asked if she knew how to cut hair, and if she had done hairdressing before that day. He immediately jumped from his seat, realizing that Iris was about to cut someone's hair for the first time in her life. However, she had no intention of retreating and grabbed him by the neck on the threshold of the room. He made his decision too quickly, throwing away the chair and all the girls' attempts to help him with his hair. The girl acted quite confidently and said that she had always been a talented hairdresser since her birth. Not understanding where so much confidence came from, he warned that it could be too dangerous. In response, Iris said that she herself was not sure of success, but that she would like to try something. If his hair looks better than it does now, that will already be considered a great victory. After much persuasion, he decided to give in, allowing her to work a little on his appearance. The haircut lasted only 10 minutes, after which only the cut locks remained on the floor. She worked hard, hoping the boy would like this hairstyle. Curiously, his gaze didn't change at all, as if he doubted the correctness of that decision. However, if you look at it from the outside, you can easily see that the new hairstyle suits him very well. Looking at her masterpiece, Iris realized that his face posed a great danger to all the girls. Not understanding why she was behaving that way, he asked her to explain how he looked after the changes. Instead of responding, the girl handed him a mirror so he could personally check the successful transformation. Now Iris was sure that the hairdresser really had talent because it was the first time she had styled his hair. Looking at his thoughtful expression, she still didn't see the joy that Theo should have felt. Looking at himself in the reflection, the boy said that now he could see his eyes, which he had tried so hard to hide. Only now did he suddenly realize that it was precisely because of his red eyes that he had been nicknamed a demonic creature. He probably doesn't like seeing his eyes, which have become much more open after cutting his hair. It didn't matter how much she praised his hair and eyes. The main thing was what he thought of himself now. Determined to remind him of something, the girl distracted his attention and briefly removed the mirror from his face. Theo turned to look at her and waited for the next set of words that he had heard many times before. However, Iris admitted that she liked his hair a lot, which was as dark as the night sky, and his red eyes reminded her of beautiful rubies, and the girl with a smile suggested not hiding his beauty. Whatever they say to her, she will always like those eyes and all the appearance that God has given him. Having said these words, the girl waited in silence for a while for a reaction, hoping to have managed to convince him. Theo had really never heard anything like that, as her confessions sounded quite sincere. With a smile on his face, he thanked the girl for her help, promising to think carefully about her words. Perhaps this was the best compliment for her effort, and now he could really smile. It was as if he hadn't even realized he had smiled, quickly returning his expression to its previous state. Iris had already managed to see his smile, and said that he had the prettiest smile in the world. Furthermore, she was very happy that with her help such an excellent image had been created. Theo suddenly admitted that he still had no desire to make new friends. She gave him a new hairstyle, taught the boy to smile, but for some reason he behaved as before. The girl couldn't understand why he rejected people who could protect him at any moment. Taking his hand, she reminded him that he had already found his only friend whom he could trust. Smiling widely, Theo said that she was the only friend he had and that he didn't need anyone else. After the sudden confession, both realized that those words could be interpreted in different ways. Iris was sure that he did it on purpose and probably expected that reaction from her in advance. The boy replied that her reaction had really been very funny, although he had had no intention of joking. He really didn't need anyone else and believed that only Iris could become a true friend. He only cut his hair because she insisted, wanting to change his image a bit. With a smile on his face, the boy said that everything was done just to make her a little happier. As Iris listened to his confession with surprise, she suddenly discovered that he had never said anything like that before. In any case, it was quite unexpected for her, although the girl asked him to say it more often. He used to say that he didn't know how to make friends, but today he showed his best side. After these words, Theo finally admitted that after everything that had happened, they could be true friends. However, he then turned abruptly in the other direction, without explaining what had happened this time. Seeing him leave, she realized that those words embarrassed him too much. After a while, they decided to go for a little walk to discuss something quite important. Having chosen a secluded place, Iris decided to explain how his first changes would begin. First of all, she asked him to never talk about murders again, even if the children provoked him. For example, when he says he's going to rip someone's guts out, it instantly causes rejection from everyone else. She explained that to learn to understand people's inner world, it is not necessary to gut them, to cover them. In response, the boy asked what he should do if someone started insulting him or lying to him. Iris advised hitting that person immediately to teach them a good lesson. Realizing that that advice was a bit out of place, she quickly apologized for having said something stupid. The girl just wanted to remind people that there are many different ways to express their dissatisfaction. In addition to the brute force that Theo had previously resorted to, there are safer methods that can be used. Unfortunately, he has completely forgotten how to express his anger without using bad words. At that moment, Theo realized that perhaps he was too young to teach anyone. Deciding to move on to the second point of the rules, Iris prohibited the use of any violence. While she was saying these words, it suddenly seemed to him that she wanted to add something more. She didn't even say anything, but sometimes her silence can say much more than ordinary words. This boy seemed to be starting to manipulate her, constantly changing his behavior. Trying to ignore it, she remembered the last rule that needed to be mentioned. Looking at Theo, the girl asked him to always remain very kind so that the people around him would like him. You must be kind to absolutely everyone, not just your closest friends. That same day, Iris asked everyone to meet outside to discuss something. When the children arrived, they couldn't understand why they were invited and what the reason for the meeting was. After asking everyone to calm down a little, the girl happily thanked them for their time. But the matter was really very important, because she wanted to introduce one of the orphanage students to everyone. Many still haven't had the chance to meet him, because he constantly avoids meetings. She still couldn't say the name of this student, but she assured them that very soon they would know everything. One of the students suddenly announced that in the orphanage there was a boy who was avoided even by some teachers. Realizing that things could go wrong, Iris quickly attracted everyone's attention. She explained that her friend was not in a very good mood due to constant teasing. Iris is very sorry, but this boy can't even play ball because no one accepts to accept him on the team. Upon saying these words, she asked them to become those people who could show a drop of affection. To make the conversation a little more pleasant, she felt something very tasty in her pocket. After handing out treats to the children, the girl reminded them that it was this boy who had asked them to do that. It was possible to take several candies at once because he always appreciated care and pampered his friends. Iris decided that it was the right time and decided to introduce her best friend. After a long introduction, she made a gesture with her hand and asked the children to pause for a moment. The students were very surprised to realize that her best friend was that same boy with red eyes. Theo was indeed there, hidden behind a tree all this time next to the crowd of students. At first, he didn't want to say anything and simply watched them, preparing for his exit. But after a second, Theo smiled with that smile that instantly lit up his face, making him incredibly cute. Previously, they had no idea that this evil boy could smile like that and could be the life of the party. Iris did a good job teaching him to be welcoming and polite in his treatment of others. One of the students asked why this boy had black hair and red eyes. Running quickly towards Theo, the girl realized that such a cute boy simply couldn't be a demon. And there's nothing wrong with black hair and red eyes, even if it looks a bit unusual. Margaret disagreed, as no one had provided proof that he wasn't a demon. Realizing that the students still had doubts, Iris decided to dispel their last doubts. Turning abruptly towards Theo, she made it clear to him that it was now time for a short performance. She loudly demanded that he extend his hand, and he obeyed the order without hesitation. Like an obedient puppy, after testing one piece of equipment, Iris asked for the second one, intending to convince everyone. Just like in the first case, Theo followed all the orders in silence and didn't look at all like a dangerous animal. This was proof that the boy was not a demon and was quite friendly. None of the orphanage students had ever seen anything like it, considering Theo the most unruly child. At that moment, loud voices were heard from the crowd, and some began to claim that she had tamed the demon. Surrounding the girl on all sides, the children began to compete with each other to praise her, thanking her for the work she had done. The truth is that she didn't intend for this effect to happen and didn't want him to be considered a demon. Despite this, Theo started to be treated completely differently. They no longer constantly avoided meeting him in the hallways. At every opportunity, Iris told him that he was not dangerous at all and that there was no reason to be afraid of him. Receiving enthusiastic praise, the girl only thought about Theo finding new friends. Only now did Evelyn finally understand why her best friend read all those books. She demanded that she reveal the secret and tell how she managed to tame a real demon. After class, Iris met with Theo again, grabbing his hand tightly and asking for forgiveness. In response, the boy said that everything was perfectly fine and that he held no grudges against the residents of the orphanage. His silence constantly scared her, because the girl knew that deep down he was still very angry. However, his expression remained the same as the boy repeated again that he had nothing to be angry about. With a proud smile, he declared that from the beginning he had considered Iris's grand plan a failure. But now he no longer cares what those around him say, and if they consider him the son of the devil. The most important thing is what Iris herself thinks, because for him, one best friend is enough. He said these words so sincerely, as if he had really changed after they met. Furthermore, the boy was sure that the plan had worked as intended, despite the appearance of failure. None of the orphanage students laugh at him anymore, or even point their fingers at him from a distance. He jokingly pointed out that with her help, Iris had driven out the very demon that lived deep within his soul. After hearing his words, she still felt sad because almost no one could see it. Gently taking her hands, Theo intended to say something else, although the girl had probably already guessed it. Theo was grateful to fate because the best girl did not despise him at all, but considered him her best friend. For this reason, he asked not to get angry over trifles, hoping that with time everyone else would also change their minds. This was exactly what Iris had been waiting for, knowing that the children needed time to get used to the new Theo. In this way, the plan to rescue Theo from abuse was completed with progress. According to legend, on January 1st this world, full of demons, was saved thanks to a kind goddess. On this very day, the goddess who caused the end of the world could grant any human wish. Hence the tradition of making a wish and keeping it a secret until it comes true. Looking at Theo, the girl asked him cheerfully if he had already decided on his New Year's wish. She was willing to make 2 wishes at once if he had nothing to wish for himself. In response, the boy reminded her that she didn't believe in the existence of demons, but for some reason, she believed in an ancient legend. Iris didn't deny that there were demons in the world, but she didn't believe he was one of those creatures. She only saw a good boy in front of her, while all demons are evil. Hearing these words, the boy decided to remain silent, as if he wasn't finishing the conversation about something very important. Meanwhile, Iris decided to ask the goddess to make her rich so she could run 100 orphanages. Theo asked her what she planned to do with these shelters if she really had the chance. She replied without hesitation that she would make all people take care of orphans so that no one in this world would be left alone. The boy replied with a smile that she could do it without money, even if she didn't become fabulously rich. Iris said with regret that in our world nothing happens without money, and soon everyone will start paying for the air. Since she had very skilled hands, she planned to work as a maid on some large estate. That was exactly how the girl wanted to earn a living and become very rich someday. Turning to him, she wanted to know what he planned to do and how he would earn money. She warned that this was just a casual conversation and that he could easily share his plans. Taking his hand, the girl explained to him that after leaving the shelter, they would still have to look for work. Although there are still 2 years ahead, it is worth thinking about it now to be prepared for anything. If they get a job at the church, they will never be able to go out into the world and do anything else. She realized with annoyance that Theo probably wanted to see many interesting things and had no intention of serving in the temple. The next moment, Iris decided to tell him the plan that had suddenly come to her mind. The girl suggested running away right now, without waiting for the day they leave the orphanage. She wanted to do this secretly from everyone, without telling her friends and teachers about their plan. After waiting for the first frost, Iris carried out her idea, because Theo promised to always follow her. Although they hadn't gone too far yet, the boys started to worry a lot about their future. She told me to just give her a hand and trust the more experienced student. Realizing that he had no other choice, the annoyed boy accepted his friend's advice. Taking her hand, he no longer wanted to argue, because the first and most important step had already been taken. If the journey became too dangerous, he promised to return immediately and do so with the same discretion. The boy asked if it was necessary to hold her hand all the time or if he could let go for a while. In response, she reminded them that the nights were too dark at this time of year, so it would be much safer this way. Fortunately, the moon was shining especially bright today, so there was almost no chance of getting lost. After a while, they decided to rest a little, and the girl opened a map of the area. Theo couldn't understand why she wanted to go out into the world now, instead of waiting until summer. Life in the shelter wasn't so bad that it was necessary to trade a warm bed for cold nights in the forest. These words seemed a bit strange to her, because for a long time the boy had been constantly humiliated. She said that she always dreamed of going on a trip, not just sitting in a closed cage. Deciding that the rest time had come to an end, the girl suggested continuing the journey towards freedom. She had always been drawn to a free life, and was glad that her best friend agreed to accompany her. Without looking at her feet, the girl didn't even notice the stone lying on the surface. Unable to keep her balance, she fell onto the snow with her whole body, and Theo couldn't catch her in time. Unfortunately, the blow was quite strong, and she felt intense pain for some time. She seemed to have twisted her ankle, and now doubted if she could continue that journey. With tears in her eyes, she admitted that she wanted to show him the beautiful scenery and many other interesting things. However, now, with a serious injury, they will have to turn back, return to that old cage. Not willing to accept this, the boy did what any true friend should do. Turning his back to her, he invited her to climb onto his back, promising to carry her for a long time. Until her leg stopped hurting, Theo intended to provide reciprocal help. After all, Iris had helped him at the shelter many times, and now it was his turn. Having decided to trust him, the girl slowly began to climb onto his back. Trying to be careful, she hugged him tightly and smiled, realizing that the boy really was quite strong. With a friend like that, she wasn't afraid to go further, because he could carry her with him for quite a long time. On the way, Iris had a question, but she didn't dare to talk about it directly right away. The girl was a little worried, thinking that such questions might seem quite unusual. She quietly asked Theo if he wanted to return to the shelter, and he replied that it was already too late. Hearing his answer, the girl realized that he wasn't saying it with full sincerity, and he probably wanted to go home. In that case, it wasn't clear why he acted so confidently when they were just planning their escape. By morning, they had already moved so far from the shelter that they had almost reached the planned location. The whole town opened before my eyes. It seemed as small as if it were a toy. The girl suggested simply imagining how wonderful it would be to live in that town. Theo was not at all against it, but on the condition that they would not be separated for a long time. Even if they had to study in different classes, he wouldn't want to be separated from his girlfriend. It turns out that Theo had previously been afraid to start their friendship just because he was afraid of losing her. Realizing this, the girl stood up slowly, preparing to tell him a few very important words. This might seem very sad, but it is something quite natural for all people on the planet. Iris warned that sometimes it can be difficult for people to be together every day, unless they are a family. But even so, they can go out, because the fact that they are true friends will never change. They will even be able to write letters to each other if fate separates them. Deciding not to say anything in response, the boy turned around and continued on his way. Theo seemed surprised to realize that, regardless, someday they would have to separate. That is why, starting the next day, he began to avoid too much communication. In fact, the boy tried to avoid her noticing him so that he could disconnect from communication as quickly as possible. While trying to find Theo, she had to constantly ask the other kids where they last saw him. Iris was surprised to learn that none of their mutual friends had met this boy all day. In the end, she began to deeply regret having had that conversation about breaking up. Once in the doctor's office, she tried to remain silent, although her leg still hurt from the fall. Looking at her, Miss Haley began to guess what was behind her thoughtful gaze. Smiling, the girl asked if everything was okay with her ankle and if she needed help. In response, the girl claimed that she still felt a little pain, although it had greatly diminished. Miss Haley suggested that, if something had been bothering the girl lately, she should tell her everything. The girl was sure that for such an occasion, she should have friends who were always ready to listen to her. The problem is that for some reason, her best friend stopped communicating with her, as if he had forgotten everything in a day. Unable to contain her emotions, she admitted that she now considers friendship between people completely useless. Those words sounded quite strange because, usually, children her age reason completely differently. Iris wanted to ask him the same question, but Miss Haley was more interested in the student's fate. The girl, realizing that she had said something bad, asked not to take it to heart. She didn't mean to imply that Haley didn't have friends and only wanted to continue the conversation. Lately, the girl had changed too much, and that was noticeable to any adult. At that moment, she looked almost nothing like the Iris that Miss Haley remembered. The girl watched her more closely and tried to understand what all those strange changes were due to. Deciding to change the subject a little, she reminded her with a smile that children grow up too fast nowadays. Such phrases were not used by small children, but belonged to adults. Rising quickly from her chair, the girl asked to wait a little while she prepared fresh tea. After bringing the tea, she admitted that for the first time in her life she was so interested. Deciding not to remain silent about her problem, Iris honestly admitted to her that she had recently lost her best friend. She felt that he was constantly avoiding her, even though Miss Haley advised her not to pay attention to it. And yet the girl couldn't understand the reason why he so desperately avoided meeting. Knowing that they were talking about the boy with black hair and red eyes, the girl said that it was very unusual. In similar situations, Haley tried to remember everything she had talked about with the person who started to avoid communication. At first glance, this may seem surprising, but it is the only way to understand the motive for his resentment. Iris happily said that in their last conversation, she warned Theo that someday they would separate. Hearing this, the girl stated that it was that phrase that became the reason for his distancing. Pointing her finger towards the window, she added that she had just seen someone with black hair. Quickly leaving the office, the girl asked Theo loudly to stop and talk a little. She wanted an honest conversation about why they suddenly stopped communicating and didn't see each other for almost a week. The boy stopped and replied that the reason was very simple. He didn't want to separate from Iris. To avoid more pain in the future than he already had, he decided to cut off communication beforehand. With the intention of explaining something to him, the girl grabbed his hand, asking him not to avoid the conversation. Looking him directly in the eyes, she said that there was no real reason to break up. Every meeting always ends in separation, but Iris hoped that someday they would meet again. Theo didn't want that, because then they would have to go through suffering to reunite. He thought about her words for a long time, so he decided to experience what it was like to live far from Iris. Hearing this confession, she finally understood why he had been so diligently avoiding communication all this time. She asked him not to worry about anything, because if they separated, the separation wouldn't last too long. She knew very well what tormented him the most, but decided to listen to the boy. Suddenly, he grabbed her hands, telling her that he couldn't live far from her and that therefore they would have to get married. Theo explained that if they got married and started a family, they could always be close to each other. In response, she warned that marriage is never celebrated just like that, and that there must be love between people. Deciding that there was no other way out, Theo confessed his love to her, although she didn't expect such words at all. Noticing her doubts, he let go of her hands without understanding why she still didn't trust him. Iris said that that was not the case at all, and that she had never had a reason to doubt his words. Theo hoped that, when they were adults, they could officially become husband and wife. Trying not to offend her friend, the girl asked him to calm down a little and think everything through carefully. She had been saying things like that quite a bit lately when she simply wanted to change the subject. Not long ago, she literally stood him up, and now the boy saw something else in her. She became the only person who didn't treat him like a child of a demonic creature. With tears in his eyes, Theo admitted that if one day she left his life, he simply couldn't live. These words touched the girl's heart, because she understood that they were said with the utmost sincerity. After asking him to wipe away her tears, Iris reminded him once more that she would always be there, and that she would never leave him alone. These words made him feel much better, and that sweet smile appeared on Theo's face. He apologized for avoiding communication and random encounters in the hallway for almost an entire week. The next second, he hugged her tightly, never wanting to let go of his beloved friend. After apologizing to her, he asked her to stay like that for a while, because he missed Iris very much. She didn't mind at all, although his behavior was becoming stranger and stranger. The fact that one day they would have to separate was very hard for Theo, and it would take him time to accept it. After a short time, they were in the prayer room asking the Lord for happiness and prosperity. Previously, Theo avoided such activities, but now he prayed along with everyone else, having learned the words of the prayer. Exactly a year had passed since then, and they were already 15 years old, which meant the school graduation day was approaching. Looking at him carefully, Iris noticed that his hair had grown longer, and his face was beginning to acquire increasingly rougher features. The woman warned them, with a smile, that today priests from Haley's temple would come to visit them, so they had to greet them. In the future, the children will see them much more frequently, and must be introduced to them as soon as possible. The girl had never heard of such visits before, and Miss Haley had never told her anything about it. She was sure that all the priests were old men, but today very young novices had come to visit. What was even more surprising was that some of the priests were really handsome young men. Noticing that she was looking at the priest for too long, Theo warned her that he might notice it. She quickly came to her senses and insisted that it had happened by accident and that she didn't want to look in that direction at all. Turning around, the boy realized that the priest himself was staring too intently in their direction. It seems he is doing it on purpose, trying to attract the student's attention. At some point, Iris couldn't look away as if she were enchanted by his spell. Trying to bring her to her senses, Theo called her name aloud, although the girl didn't hear anything. She was immersed in a strange dimension, where only she and this young priest were. He said that he had been looking for her for a long time, and was not surprised to find Iris in an orphanage. After these words, she couldn't stand, and only Theo managed to catch her as she fell. Looking at his friend, he was very excited because something like this had never happened to her before. A moment later, she opened her eyes again and found herself in a strange place, far from the shelter. The girl suddenly felt that something similar had happened before, only she was a little different. Holding out his hand, the stranger assured her that he too had not given up, and that he was still moving forward. Looking her directly in the eyes, he warned her that the same fate would eventually await her. After this, Iris suddenly opened her eyes, realizing that the lessons were over, and she was taken to her room. It's hard to say if it was an ordinary dream or if the girl really saw someone from a past life. Opening the door silently, Miss Haley saw that the girl had already woken up, and now she could tell everything calmly. The problem was that Iris remembered almost nothing and asked what happened in the prayer room. The girl began to tell how, during the prayer, she fell unconscious for no reason at all. She remained like that all day, so Theo decided to take a short nap without leaving her room. The boy was there the whole time, waiting for the moment when he could see his girlfriend's eyes again. It was very sweet of him, but Iris couldn't understand what had caused her sudden fainting. Haley was sure that it was all due to accumulated stress, because there were simply no other reasons. She advised her to thank this boy, because it was Theo who managed to catch her in time. While he was stroking her head, she still didn't understand why that priest was looking so intently into her eyes. Also, it wasn't clear why she lost consciousness the moment their gazes crossed. Feeling someone's soft palm, the boy woke up abruptly, realizing that everything bad was already in the past. She didn't expect that with a light touch on his hair, he would open his eyes so suddenly. But what surprised her the most was Theo's reaction, because he instantly hugged her, squeezing her tightly against him. He acted as if they hadn't seen each other for years, even though she had slept in the room for less than a day. After having promised him that she was completely fine, the girl asked him to show her his face. It was clear that Theo had been crying for too long, and now he was a little embarrassed to look up. She asked him why he was so worried about her and what had actually happened in the prayer room. Blushing with embarrassment, the boy simply said that he wasn't worried at all and that he had no intention of crying. Teacher Haley said that she was perfectly fine after fainting. Theo was a little upset because they couldn't go to a normal hospital like everyone else. With a smile on his face, he asked not to worry since he wasn't in any danger anyway. Realizing that sleeping in that place wasn't entirely comfortable, Iris suggested that he lie down in the soft bed. Hearing this, the boy was very surprised and asked her if she understood what that phrase meant. In his opinion, there was nothing special about it, because in this way, she simply decided to show her affection. Theo reminded them that they were no longer small children, and that sleeping in the same bed wasn't entirely okay. When the teacher walked into the room, she accidentally overheard their strange conversation. Opening the door abruptly, she asked with a smile what was happening and what they had been talking about the whole time. Observing them carefully, Miss Haley realized that the topic of their conversation was not childish at all. After asking him to speak a little lower, Iris suggested that he sleep in the chair since he liked it a lot. In response, Theo admitted that it would still be much better than sleeping with her in the same bed. Not wanting to continue the meaningless argument, she decided to end it, feeling a bit offended by her friend. Covering herself with a blanket, she apologized for having worried him with her words. Approaching the girl, he asked her to simply close her eyes and rest a little after what happened. He stroked her hair with such care and tenderness that Iris couldn't look away for a long time. Looking at his face, she suddenly admitted that he had changed quite a bit lately. In response, the boy reminded her that they were the same age and asked her who she saw in him. The question seemed a bit strange, and Iris had to wonder who Theo really was. Sometimes she started to think that he looked like a wild cat, especially when he behaved too provocatively. He was a young, sensual cat, whose wild nature had not yet been completely extinguished somewhere deep inside. This comparison seemed quite offensive to him, because at that moment she was comparing him to an ordinary animal. And common, realizing that he was very angry, the girl apologized for the inappropriate joke. She had not intended to offend him in any way, but after these words, Theo's mood suddenly worsened. He advised me to go to bed, instead of continuing to talk nonsense. In those moments, Iris became a little scared with each passing year. His character was becoming harder and harder. She had never been able to understand boys' thoughts, especially when it came to Theo. The next day, they went to the medical room, and Miss Haley said there was nothing to worry about. Thanking her for her help, the girl took Theo's hand with a smile and suggested they walk around the street for a while. Strange as it may seem, he acted like last time, pulling his hand away and ordering her not to do it again. The boy refused to hold her hand and asked her not to do anything like that, otherwise they would fight again. This reaction seemed too strange to her, as if he had started treating her like a stranger. Thinking about his words, Iris couldn't understand what had caused such a sudden mood swing. Addressing him, she told him that in that form he looked like a rebel, and she didn't like it at all. She asked him why he was doing this to his best friend, while Miss Haley watched from afar. At that moment, Theo decided to confess something, knowing full well that those words could hurt. Looking at the girl directly in the eyes, he declared that she was not his sister at all. Without understanding what he meant, Iris asked him to explain that strange statement. Instead of answering, he turned abruptly in the other direction and said that it would be better for everyone. From that day on, the boy began to distance himself from her, without really explaining why he felt offended this time. Seeing her friend in a bad mood, Evelyn asked why she and Theo had fought again. She secretly said that the boy had been somewhat sad lately and that it seemed strange to her. Realizing that they kept treating him like a stranger, Iris demanded that they not talk about him in that tone. She shouted so loudly that all the other students suddenly turned in her direction. After this, the girl admitted that she didn't do anything and that she didn't know why Theo changed suddenly. Margaret asked them not to make so much noise and to leave the office immediately if this continued. He slammed the book shut and realized that right now he needed some privacy and time to think about everything. Once outside, Iris tried to understand why he constantly avoided communication and stopped looking in her direction. In the end, you can go completely crazy if everything continues in the same spirit. Not long ago, Theo was crying and wanted to marry her, but now it seems he has even changed his mind about being friends. At that moment, she suddenly heard a familiar voice asking her what she was doing there. Raising her head, she saw in front of her Theo, who had been watching her from afar for a long time. He said that Iris could catch a cold and decided to share his warm scarf with her. Then he tied the scarf around her neck as carefully as if they hadn't fought at all. Looking at Theo, she reminded him that it was already March and that the weather wasn't that cold. She felt that he was just looking for an excuse to apologize for his past behavior. The girl jumped to her feet and said that winter had long since ended, but that he was still wearing a scarf. Unable to contain her emotions, she started crying because the boy was hiding something again. Theo asked her to calm down. He didn't want to see her upset simply because of wearing a scarf. Pushing his hand aside, she said that he knew perfectly well the reason why she was crying. Lately, Theo has been constantly withdrawing and saddening his friend. In fact, he wanted to say something else, as if a new feeling had been born deep in the depths of his soul. She didn't want to admit it, and the boy asked her to guess what he was thinking. He guessed the main reason why she had started shedding tears so unexpectedly. With a smile on his face, Theo said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and that was the only reason she felt so sad. He was absolutely right, but Iris didn't want him to talk about it in that tone. Meanwhile, the boy continued to be happy because he really guessed her thoughts. However, she was in no hurry to share the joy with him, warning him that she didn't like those kinds of jokes. During all this time, he was deliberately provoking Iris, trying to hurt her feelings. Theo promised that he would never do such a thing again, and that it was just a joke. After that, he suddenly admitted that he had liked her for a long time, smiling with his radiant smile. The girl clearly didn't expect such a confession, which came quite unexpectedly. Puffing out her cheeks, she warned that she wasn't as easy to fool as it might seem at first glance. He still believed that it was enough to have just one friend and didn't even try to make new ones. In that case, it wasn't clear why he had avoided meeting with his only friend for a whole week. After a while, Theo invited her into the house, offering to warm up a little by the fireplace. Sitting across from each other, they couldn't think of any topic of conversation for a while. Suddenly, Theo reminded me of that time he suggested starting a family and never separating. The family he was talking about wasn't just a brother or a dog, because in the future, the boy wanted to become her husband. The boy remembered that once she had compared him to a wild and unruly cat. At that moment, it seemed that he realized and noticed that for Iris, he was nothing more than a common animal, and ordinary. So he started thinking about how to become someone she could perceive as a person, and as her future husband. Without hearing the end of his words, Iris warned him that he shouldn't think so often about the future. Theo couldn't understand why thinking about the future was so bad and how to make plans in such a case. Looking into her eyes, he asked her why she hadn't taken him seriously yet. The girl felt a bit embarrassed at such a question, remembering that a wedding is something completely different. The only way out of the situation was marriage, and Theo suggested doing it in the future. He said these words with such confidence, as if he were ready to take full responsibility. Theo admitted that he was even a little happy, because recently she had cried because of him. In any case, Iris was glad that after today's conversation, he stopped avoiding her. Only she asked not to be reminded of the tears, claiming that she hadn't cried at all. It seemed that Theo had understood everything a long time ago and was just pretending that he had many questions. His intention was to gradually win Iris's heart without her suspecting anything. The boy suggested coming to that room as often as possible and warming up by the lit fireplace. The next day, she decided to go to the garden to water the flowers and be alone for a while. Hearing a noise behind her, the girl decided that her friend also wanted to join her. Turning around, she suddenly saw the same priest she had met during the prayer. She spoke to him loudly and asked why he had come and why he had started following her. The boy even found her words funny, because Iris got too scared at a simple greeting. She warned him that if he didn't answer at that moment, she couldn't guarantee who she would throw the watering can at. In response, the young man admitted that he expected something like that, and that he had always considered her quite intelligent. In fact, he came to chat just because he had long dreamed of getting to know each other better. Now that he was completely honest, Frey asked for a small favor. Realizing that he needed help, the girl couldn't promise that she could cope with the assigned task. She started to seem even nicer, and the priest said that they would definitely find a common language. He spoke about it as if he had known her for a long time, although they had only seen each other once in their lives. Regarding the first question, he assured that he found out about Iris from the director, who spoke very highly of her. And then their gazes crossed accidentally, after which the girl fainted. He was clearly wrong when he thought that Iris was just like all the other children in the orphanage. Hearing his words, the girl realized that that man had a very strange expression on his face. He looked at her with a strange interest, as if he wanted to get something completely different. During all this time, while he was nearby, the priest tried to behave in a friendly manner and say quite common things. Thanking him for the pleasant conversation, Iris told him that it was already time to go, since classes would start very soon. Leaving him alone, she suspected something bad, as if that man was hiding some secret. Arriving at the office, she opened the door quickly and realized that Theo had been there for a long time. He was upset about something, and Iris was sure that due to her tardiness, the boy was a bit worried. Looking at Theo, she couldn't understand why his face was like that, although he was completely fine. And yet his answer sounded too cold, as if Iris had done something wrong again. The girl begged him to tell her why. After the whole conversation, he had started behaving that way again. At that moment, she suddenly realized that Theo knew perfectly well where she had been a few minutes before. The office window looked directly out onto a field of flowers, and the priest was still standing in the same place. In other words, he saw her talking to the young man and probably got upset. The girl, pretending that nothing had happened, asked him cheerfully how his training was going. Without changing his expression, he pretended to understand if she was ready for today's test. Iris saw no problem in this test, because no one forbids orphans from performing this task. He assured them that even if one of them didn't pass the exam, the knowledge acquired would still be useful in the future. But if they manage to do it, they will be able to enter a real academy and receive a higher education. After thinking about it for a while, the boy asked what they would do if only one of them could get into the academy. He was sure that in that case, Iris would simply abandon him and dedicate all her time to training. He felt as if he were provoking her again, trying to make her look guilty in advance. Asking a slightly different question, Theo said that sometimes one has to separate from others for the sake of their future. Over time, they become adults, and adult life is very different. However, the boy was convinced that Iris was still too young to understand everything correctly. And yet, he had no doubt that she would easily pass the exam if she wanted to enter the academy. He will be very sad to accept this, because after admission, they won't be able to see each other every day. Theo asked her to answer honestly what would happen if she enrolled. It seemed to him that she would immediately abandon old friends with whom she had spent all the previous years. There was no immediate answer to his question, because no one knows what will happen to a person in the future. Continuing to look at her directly in the eyes, the boy asked her one more time if she would leave him forever. Unable to withstand such pressure, she stood up abruptly from her chair, intending to put an end to this interrogation. She couldn't concentrate on her studies, so she suggested looking for a quite interesting book. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's voice, but it clearly didn't belong to Theo. Turning around, she saw the same priest again, who hadn't given up on trying to get to know her. Iris said that she needed to study, and that now there simply wasn't time for unnecessary conversations. She was going to take the entrance exam, which would take place next spring. Frey smiled and admitted that he knew something about the academy where she would study. Hearing this, Iris started asking for help, because entrance exams were very difficult. After offering to sit down, the young man started explaining the questions that would surely appear on the test paper. She could never have imagined before that this priest would turn out to be such a wonderful teacher. After a couple of hours, she understood everything, and this was only possible thanks to detailed explanations. At this point, Frey asked her if she knew the legend of the founding of the empire. His intention was to tell a less well-known story that differs slightly from the legend. He really wanted her to hear this and stop being guided by false information. It was a story about a goddess who once descended to people from the very heavens. The story said that the goddess wanted to take care of the people who lived as slaves to demons. She had special abilities, one of which was the ability to cleanse evil and heal wounds. Lily, who had golden hair and blue eyes, knew how to cure even the most complex illnesses. As a result, the goddess began to feel affection for the people who followed her. And to protect them from the demons that constantly threatened their lives, she was reborn in a human body. After hearing the legend, she realized that that was why there was a man in the temple with the same name as the goddess. The girl had heard a similar story before, but it still seemed quite interesting to her. The young man offered to hear something else, promising that it would be even more interesting. The story goes that on the goddess's birthday, a demon was born and followed her. The goddess and the demon were constantly meeting, as if fate itself was directing them in the same direction. That's why they were so close and couldn't help but meet on Earth. After telling her this, the young man asked her with a smile if this story interested her. At that moment, she realized that at the beginning of the meeting, everything had started with a normal conversation. But then Frey started hinting at Theo, because it was this boy who everyone considered a demon. Remembering his face when he said those words, Iris began to suspect something. Perhaps the meeting wasn't a coincidence, and the priest wanted to warn them about something from the beginning. Realizing that she was thinking too much, the boy asked her what was bothering her so much. He suggested they rest a little if Iris started to feel much worse. In response, she admitted that lately she had been having strange dreams that were bothering her a bit. In her dreams, she kept hearing someone's voice in the distance, but she couldn't understand who it belonged to. Trying not to show her emotion, the girl immersed herself in reading the book again. However, her words sounded like a revelation, and it seemed a little amusing to Theo to observe her. This reaction was very offensive and immediately threw Iris off balance. However, if she is so interested in divine revelations, it means she has matured a little. After having asked not to get angry, Theo promised not to talk about it anymore and keep his jokes to himself. Iris asked him if he thought all those dreams were meaningless or could be considered signs. It was Frey who advised reading this book, and despite his appearance, he was a good teacher. At that moment, she decided to suggest something, hoping he would also be interested. Looking at Theo, she asked him if he wanted to study for exams with a private tutor. This proposal was very interesting, but she couldn't understand who would be willing to help with this. Besides, she knew very well that the boy always hated adults and didn't want to communicate with them. Even if the teacher really helped them, she suggested they do without his help. The girl didn't want to argue with him, but she wasn't prepared to put up with his constant whims. Suddenly, he placed his finger on her lips, doing it in a strange way, as if trying to show concern. After asking her not to bite her lips, He warned her that they could crack a lot on the outside. Theo demanded that she behave naturally and not constantly try to please him with some kind of help. He wanted to hear the truth if she didn't like his advice and didn't want to listen to it. At that moment, Iris admitted out loud that she wanted to study together, but the teacher had to be an adult. If they study alone, they will reach their limits too quickly, while a teacher can give them much more knowledge. Having said this, the girl remembered that recently priests from the church had begun arriving at the shelter. Realizing that she would start offering him help again, the boy immediately abandoned the idea. Standing up from the chair, she asked him why he kept refusing and what was making him feel repelled by them. The chances of getting into the academy would increase immediately, so Iris insisted on the teacher's help. She was sure that that same priest, named Frey, would be the ideal candidate. Upon hearing that name, Theo clenched the pen so hard that it fell apart into small pieces. He was clearly dissatisfied with her proposal, and even more so did not want to see that priest nearby. The boy seemed quite friendly, although there was a demonic glint in his eyes. Not wanting to back down, he said with a smile that the training could begin soon. Despite the friendly tone, the last sentence completely infuriated Theo. He looked her in the eyes with such fury that the girl no longer wanted to continue that conversation. After this, the boy turned around abruptly, intending to leave the office. Looking at him, she realized that Theo was now in too bad a mood for that type of conversation. She didn't stop him, because then their relationship could have deteriorated even more. Since she asked Mr. Frey to prepare her for admission, Theo has been avoiding communication again. Seeing him in the hallway, she asked him to stop, hoping he wouldn't make a stupid scene. This time, Iris intended to do things differently, resolving the conflict in a friendly way. Putting on a sweet face, she asked him if he was angry with his best friend. Instead of answering, the boy turned silently in the other direction and continued walking toward the dining room. As usual, they sat across from each other, although the atmosphere between them remained tense. To improve relations, the girl offered to try her lunch, promising that it was very tasty. She reminded him that he really loves croissants, but that she was willing to share some with him. Those words didn't change anything, and Iris again failed to restore the relationship. Deciding that this method definitely wouldn't help, she decided to eat them without anyone's help. After a while, she entered the garden knowing that Theo would pass by there soon. And so it happened, because after just a few minutes, his silent footsteps were heard behind us. After asking the boy to stop for a moment, Iris prepared a small gift. The flower in her hands was very beautiful, and the girl wanted to give it to her good friend. The other girls from the orphanage were with her, handing him gifts at Iris's request. Watching from her hiding place, she was sure that any boy would love such surprises. However, upon taking the coupon for a wish in his hand, Theo annoyedly crushed this modest gift. She had already understood that it wouldn't be easy to make friends, but she didn't know he would be so stubborn. The next morning, Iris decided to do something else and waited quite a long time for Theo in the shelter's hallway. Upon opening the office door, she realized with surprise that she had been waiting there all this time. This time, she didn't want to let him go so easily, realizing that this was the most opportune chance. Looking at Iris, the boy asked her what she was doing and why she decided to stop him that way. Instead of answering, she looked into his eyes in silence, intending to end their argument once and for all. Turning around, he asked to speak directly instead of looking at him in the face in silence. Suddenly, his behavior changed, and that rapid change surprised Theo a lot. Iris apologized out loud, wanting to be heard and understood by her best friend. The girl fell to her knees and begged him not to be angry because she still didn't understand what she had done wrong. She felt very sad about all of this because they had met for the first time in the last few days. Iris asked for forgiveness very sincerely, realizing that it was no coincidence that Theo held a grudge deep inside. She promised never to repeat such a mistake again if he at least told her exactly what had happened. Interestingly, the boy started to laugh, and that reaction to the apology made Iris very angry. Having calmed down a little, Theo also asked for forgiveness because he didn't want to go too far. Continuing to look at her with a mischievous smile, he didn't seem to understand how much pain his friend had gone through. However, she was so angry that the boy couldn't help but laugh. Theo said that he really enjoyed being close to her, so her words shouldn't be taken seriously. At first, he intended to apologize if his laughter had angered Iris a little. He was very happy to see her efforts when she offered him training with an adult teacher. This sentence seemed very strange to the girl, because she was really preparing for a serious step. Taking her hands, Theo said that he had been completely sincere with her and hoped that she would finally forgive him. He promised not to repeat those jokes again if they offended her so much. Although they made peace, they still hadn't agreed on private lessons, which was the most important thing. Having decided that she was capable of teaching Theo on her own, the girl decided to take a short walk. Upon leaving the orphanage building, she met the priest again, who decided to stop by to visit her again. Approaching him, Iris told him that she was very happy to see him and that she did not expect the meeting to happen so soon. Turning around, the young man greeted her in return, wanting to continue the conversation they had started. The girl was completely ready for the training, if he hadn't changed his mind about teaching her yet. She believed that 2 or 3 days would be enough to learn everything she needed. She looked at Frey attentively, trying to find out if he had any ulterior motive. Deciding that everything would be fine, she thanked him again for the help offered. The young man asked her not to worry about anything, as it would be a great honor for him to prepare a future student of the academy. Be that as it may, this decision was mutual, and each of them will receive certain benefits. A few days later, the first day of class was approaching, when Mr. Frey would give her class. Lost in her thoughts, she didn't even notice that another student was walking towards her, accidentally bumping into him in the hallway. The priest's true purpose remained unknown, so she intended to remain on guard. Upon entering the office, she accidentally saw another person who, for some reason, decided to change their mind. Mr. Frey and Theo were face to face in the center of the office, as if they were old rivals. In her excitement, all the textbooks fell from her hands and hit the floor with a crash. The reaction was the most terrible, and the girl decided to follow the order. They literally attacked each other with their gazes, not wanting to give in and insisting on their leadership. Determined to break that staring duel, Iris decided to draw attention to herself and distract them. By introducing Mr. Frey, she said that he was the teacher who had agreed to give some lessons. After that, she did the same, introducing the boy as her best friend. Despite this, both continued to look into each other's eyes without wanting to shake hands. Iris explained that the boy wasn't very keen on the idea of taking private lessons, so she decided to study alone. Curiously, he suddenly said that he didn't remember any of that and that he would like to participate in the preparations. It turned out that Theo also wanted to study at the academy, realizing that passing the exam would be quite difficult. He acted a bit strangely and only clearly changed his mind after meeting Frey. Hearing these words, the girl began to ask the teacher to accept another student. Mr. Frey had already trained several students once, but he admitted that it would be a bit difficult. This adult man also started behaving like a real child, although he could have simply accepted. Remembering his age, she suddenly realized that this young man was only 18 years old. Theo turned to her and asked her why she had decided to study with that particular man. Realizing that those words were too offensive, the girl immediately apologized. She assured him that, despite his insolence, Theo was the most diligent student and would prepare well. She was happy that after a bit of persuasion, Frey did not object and took the boy as a second student. Theo warned her not to stay alone with him, even if he invited her to a private lesson. After a while, they began their first lesson, and Mr. Frey decided to start with the basics. It seemed as if in a past life he had been a teacher, and explained the lesson topic very well. But this is even better, because only true teachers can prepare you to pass the exam. At that moment, the girl realized that the inkwell was empty, and she had forgotten to take new ink. Noticing this, Mr. Frey suggested she go look for another inkwell. Otherwise, she would have nothing to write with. Theo grabbed her hand tightly and offered her to use his ink, which was enough for both. In response, she said it wouldn't be hard for her to bring others, and that she would return very soon. Having promised not to be late, she went to another office to quickly solve the problem. So they were left alone, looking into each other's eyes and waiting for Iris to return. As soon as she left the office, the smile disappeared from Frey's face in an instant. And now, he didn't look like a kind teacher. Previously, the boy was sure that priests behaved a little differently, and were different from everyone else. But looking at Frey, he began to guess that these people were just like everyone around them. Suddenly, the young man declared that he clearly saw the relationship between Theo and Iris. He said it in too strange a way, as if he had wanted for a long time to be alone with that student. Iris said that Theo was no different from other students, but he always thought a little differently. Even when someone tries to convince Frey that they are right, he never forgets his own experience. Realizing he was hinting at a demonic origin, the boy prepared for another round of insults. The young man said with a smile that it was just fate, and that Theo would always be a source of fear to those around him. The boy, who didn't want to listen to such nonsense, hit the table with his fist with all his might. He never believed in fictions like God or the devil, and wasn't going to waste time on that nonsense. Returning quickly to the office, Iris did not expect it to be so quiet. Instead of studying the lesson topic, the two simply sat at their desks and talked about nothing. Smiling, the young man said that while she was absent, they just hadn't found a topic of conversation. The girl left them alone so they could get closer, but in the end, the relationship only got worse. A few days later, she returned to the room where the first lesson had taken place. After that lesson, Theo never appeared again, preferring not to meet with teacher Frey. He just said that he had his own lessons, and that they were also very important for getting into the academy. Meanwhile, she couldn't shake the feeling that with those words, he was just looking for an excuse for his absence. Looking at the girl, Mr. Frey asked her if there was something serious preventing her from concentrating. In response, Iris admitted that on the day of their first meeting, she didn't really trust the new teacher. She was always very demanding of people, and constantly tried to find out each person's intentions. After all, nobody will prepare you for the exam by teaching extra lessons completely for free. But now, after apologizing to the young man, she realized she had been very wrong. This confession was quite sincere, even if it might seem funny. Unable to contain her emotions, she laughed out loud, saying they had hated someone for too long. Staring into his eyes, the girl warned him that she might start suspecting him again. Frey had his own reasons for helping, as he had wanted to get a little closer to Iris for quite some time. Furthermore, he considered her his own sister, because they had the same eye color. Iris never had siblings, so she would be happy to have a real brother. His reaction was so unexpected that at first Frey couldn't answer a word. He himself said they were very similar, so the girl decided to consider him her brother. She saw nothing wrong with it, since normally relatives always help in difficult situations. At first his speech seemed very curious, although the young man had some doubts. Realizing she had worried him, the girl said she could easily do without it. Turning quickly to the teacher, she just wanted to say that he could very well consider her his sister. The next day, Iris was ready for a new lesson, having brought the necessary literature in advance. On the way to the office, she accidentally saw Theo, who was also walking down the orphanage hallway. Turning quickly in his direction, the boy suddenly asked if demons existed in the real world. This question seemed quite strange, and it was unclear why he started asking it. He just wanted to know her personal opinion about the legend that spoke of the good goddess and the demon. Remembering that no one had ever seen these creatures, the girl said it was probably fiction. She couldn't understand why he was so upset by that question, which had never occurred to her before. If he thought again that he was a demon, Iris warned him that it was complete nonsense. She asked him to tell her directly if someone had started provoking him again in the last few days. Instead of answering, Theo turned abruptly in the other direction, not wanting to continue that topic of conversation. He walked slowly towards the office, without really explaining why he needed to ask about that legend. Sitting at her desk, the girl asked him why he had stopped attending the classes given by Frey. Angrily closing the textbook, the boy admitted that he had hated this guy from the beginning. She wasn't asking about his attitude towards the teacher, and wanted to understand if Theo would continue his preparation. Iris asked him not to hate him too much, even if he stopped attending classes. Hate only gets in the way, because there are many things in life that require attention and concentration. The girl explained that hate is an emotional burden that must be left behind. That's why she wanted to teach him to be a little different and stop hating the people around him. In response, Theo said he would do his best, but he couldn't promise it would work. After a while, Evelyn was waiting for her in the office, hoping to discover a very interesting matter. After waiting for her friend, she smiled and offered to sit down and tell her little secret. Turning to Iris, she asked her what her relationship was with the priest Frey. She spoke of that handsome boy with blonde hair and a bright look who served in the temple. Without understanding what was being discussed, the girl asked her not to say anything stupid and not to embarrass her. However, you can tell everything to your best friend. So Evelyn continued with her questions. In fact, Iris was not sure that he could really be her brother. At that moment, The friend pointed in the direction where the young man had been for a long time. Frey arrived at the garden quite early, as if hoping to meet the best student. Evelyn told her that Iris loved taking care of the flowers, and since then she spends time in the garden. Adjusting her glasses, she said that this man came there just to take Iris away. All because she was his younger sister, lost at some point in his deep childhood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to waste time. Evelyn asked if Mr. Frey mentioned his sister when attending private classes. Remembering their last conversation, she suddenly realized that his words really sounded similar. It hadn't occurred to her to think about it, but now Iris realized that he really believed it. Her friend was very happy that she would soon be able to find a brother. Noticing the unnecessary conversations, the director looked sternly in their direction. Wanting to create perfect silence, her friend decided that it would be better to ask him in person and suggested looking for Mr. Frey. Taking Iris by the hand, she ran quickly outside, hoping to find the teacher in the garden. As expected, the young man was still there, as if he were really waiting for Iris. The girl warned her not to ask directly about it, although it was already too late. Noticing that there were two students behind him, Frey greeted them politely with a warm smile. Evelyn felt a little uncomfortable, but she wanted to ask a question about her friend. Only she asked him to answer honestly, promising not to tell anyone and not to reveal his secret. Iris, getting ahead of her friend, said that she was simply being a fool, and that they shouldn't take her seriously. Looking into his eyes, she asked him in a low voice what the main reason for his arrival at the orphanage was. She was sure that the young man was trying to find someone, and that was the only reason he appeared here so often. The question seemed quite unexpected, since this student had never been interested in such things. Looking at Evelyn, Frey didn't know for a moment how to answer correctly. Iris realized that he was reacting too unusually and couldn't utter a single word. Without even turning around, he suddenly replied that there was some truth to her words. The girl realized immediately that that was true, and that he really was her friend's brother. After these words, Mr. Frey admitted that he had been desperately looking for a loved one here for a long time. Pointing his finger at Iris, the girl understood immediately which close person was being spoken about. Iris reminded them not to attach too much importance to their words, and that they needed to go to class urgently. After thanking him for his time, the girl tried to get Evelyn out of there as quickly as possible. Having quickly found shelter, she admitted that it was no coincidence that she told Iris about her assumption. Mr. Frey had been there too long, and clearly didn't like flowers enough to wander around the garden for hours. In her opinion, even a baby can understand that this is true, and that, in fact, they are blood relatives. Taking her hand, the girl was happy for her friend, who had had such sudden luck. She reminded her that Teacher Frey was a very respected priest, and that he could help her find work. The main question was whether Thea would accept this news, and how their future relationship would change. The thought made Iris shudder, because the two had hated each other from the beginning. She asked me to promise her that everything would remain secret, and that the other kids definitely wouldn't find out. Evelyn was very surprised, because there is nothing wrong with being blood related to a priest. In any case, she should have kept her mouth shut and not told anyone about today's meeting. The girl was a little annoyed, because she really wanted to tell Miss Haley about this. And Jess, but she said she would fulfill her request, and that they could keep this little secret for a while. Perhaps she can be trusted, and Evelyn can keep her promise. The next day, Theo finally arrived at class, having succumbed to his friend's persuasion. He still couldn't understand what connected her to the priest, and if there was any secret between them. Meanwhile, Mr. Frey asked them to remember this part of the lesson, because it would surely appear on the exam. After thinking for a second, the girl realized that she had been asked a question about her homework. The teacher asked me not to worry, saying that anything can happen, and that sometimes it's okay to take a little break. He spoke about it as if he treated Iris with much more care than all the other students. Looking at his face, she tried to understand if that young man had always been so friendly. Theo had already noticed her confusion and asked her what she was thinking about this time. To distract her somehow from her thoughts, he pressed a cold jar against her face. It worked, although the boy had no intention of scaring her and simply wanted to get her attention. It was clear from his voice that he was hiding some secret related to Teacher Frey again. He didn't like those secrets and didn't want there to be any secrets between them. Smiling, the girl asked him not to make up stupid things because she was simply remembering the subject of the previous lesson. Thea reminded her that she couldn't be fooled by such simple excuses. However, if Iris reveals that Mr. Frey is her brother, it could create a major conflict. Knowing what this boy would become in the future, she didn't want to repeat the previous tragic history. The girl suddenly got up from her chair and announced that she urgently needed to go to another class. Without explaining why they were in such a hurry, she ran out of the office, leaving them alone again. The next day, all the students were very friendly and invited her to go with them to the library. It was strange. She had many friends, but she couldn't share her fears with any of them. Looking out the window, she wanted to find teacher Haley and discuss something with her. Heading to her office, she apologized out loud if she had decided to arrive at a slightly inopportune moment. However, when she looked into the office, she was very surprised, because instead of Haley, there was Frey again. With the same wide smile, he greeted his student, whom he was seeing for the second time. Without understanding what he was doing there, the girl decided that he was simply following her. It turned out that he had come there for tea at the personal invitation of Miss Haley. In response, the girl simply said it was true, although her expression was a little strange. Having decided that the two had something to talk about, the teacher remembered an important matter. Getting up from the table, he didn't want to interfere with this, giving the opportunity to keep everything a secret. However, the girl had no intention of leaving her office, so she suggested that they both go outside. It was a bit unusual, as it was as if they had been shown the door without any real explanation. Looking at each other, they realized they needed to get to the main point. Since that was what Miss Haley had ordered, Frey asked if he could ask her for a favor, if it wouldn't be too much trouble. The young man wanted to give a gift, but he didn't quite understand what modern children want. Iris looked at the priest in surprise, without understanding why she should be the one to help choose a gift. In response, he reminded her that in that place, there was only one person who was truly close to him. Having agreed to help him, the girl got into the carriage, which had been prepared in advance near the main entrance. She was a little nervous, although she tried to act natural and not show it. Mr. Frey continued smiling, as if they had known each other all their lives. However, sometimes he overdid it, and she wanted to fulfill that strange request as quickly as possible. A while ago, he asked for official permission, explaining to the director that he wanted to take Iris with him. At first, the woman didn't understand why he had chosen that particular student, and what they would do in the city. In the end, the director, who hated children, agreed to let her student take a small trip. Addressing Frey, the girl asked him why he decided to give a gift to the orphanage boarder. In response, he said he just wanted to do it, but Iris didn't quite believe it. Soon they arrived in the city center, which was really huge. Looking out the window, the girl admitted that everything was much prettier than she had imagined. The roads were beautiful and smooth, so the carriage easily took them to the right place. Getting down the stairs first, Mr. Frey decided to help his student a little. Giving her his hand, he asked Iris to be careful, although she felt quite safe. She felt that he was acting like a true brother, showing genuine concern for his sister. With a smile on his face, Mr. Frey said it would be bad if she suddenly got lost in the city crowd. To prevent this from happening, he asked her to follow him and not wander off when passing the beautiful shop windows. It was as if he saw in her a little girl who required attention and care. Sometimes, looking at his face, she began to feel that that man knew perfectly well about her rebirth. Pointing upwards, he reminded them that there were shops in that direction and suggested they go up the stairs. Looking closely at Iris, the young man's expression changed for a second. She noticed it immediately, but she didn't understand which shop they were heading to. After thinking a bit, Frey suggested buying some toys, although children get tired of them quite quickly. Looking around, Iris realized that all the shops in the city were concentrated in that place. They could go anywhere and find something interesting anywhere. The first thing I had to do was visit a toy store to choose a cute doll. Suddenly, the girl said she would like to have her own personal diary for various important notes. With a smile on her face, she added that a girl should always have a notebook that contains women's secrets. However, many of the children in the orphanage still couldn't read or write, so the gift might not be suitable. Looking to the side, she found another shop that also had something very interesting. Reminding them that winter would soon begin, she suggested buying winter hats as a gift. Taking the opportunity, the girl decided to try on a beautiful hat. She liked the white color more because it was more versatile. Seeing a mountain of different hats in her hands, she hoped she wouldn't have to try them all on. After a while, she realized that going into a clothing store wasn't the best idea. After trying on dozens of different hat models, the girl began to ask for mercy. She really liked the things, but she didn't want to spend all day trying them on. Realizing that she was about to leave, the young man asked her to go into a couple more clothing stores. When she came out, she suddenly realized that every minute there were more and more people in the square. Turning around, she saw the clothes she had to try on again. But this time Frey was holding something very unusual. After showing her a beautiful dress, the young man offered to have her try it on, hoping he had guessed the size correctly. Frey reminded her that it was their first time going to the city center, and that he simply had to buy her a new dress. A little while ago, this man said that she is no longer a child, although he still sees her as a little girl. Looking sadly at Iris, he was very upset when he realized that she might not like the yellow dress. In order not to upset him even more, the girl had to agree and try on the garment. After a while, she appeared with a new summer look that suited Iris very well. Immediately after, the young man offered to choose a toy, pointing to a cute and sweet rabbit. As a result, after visiting about 10 different stores, Mr. Frey bought several fairy tales and entertainment books. The orphanage library had no children's books, so the children were not particularly eager to learn to read. This was probably the best gift that could be given to the children of the orphanage. On the way back, Mr. Frey bought her a sweet lollipop, wanting to treat Iris to something. He looked at her as if, in his eyes, she was a little girl with a lollipop in her hands. At that moment, a strange stranger appeared behind her, accidentally hitting her in the back. The lollipop immediately fell out of my hands, and the rude man even stepped on it with his foot. Instead of apologizing, he blamed Iris for everything, asking her not to take up all the space on the road. Upon hearing these words, Frey's expression changed abruptly, and he stopped being so welcoming. It seemed that he was ready to pounce on him at that moment, and only Iris had a hard time stopping him. Looking at her, the young man realized that he could not start a fight in front of a little girl. He remembered the face of that slob, and decided to see him again when he was alone in the city. To quickly fix things, the teacher bought another lollipop and suggested the girl forget the incident. Taking her in his arms, he decided to personally carry her to the carriage to make it much faster. Addressing Iris, he said that she was much lighter than the other children and that it would be quite simple. At that moment, the girl asked him if he had really come to the shelter looking for her. If that was true, she still didn't understand why he did it or what his true motives were. Instead of answering, the young man got too close to her, as if he really were a relative. With a smile on his face, he admitted that he wanted to become a family as soon as possible and dispel all her doubts. In the afternoon, the girl returned to the shelter, trying to understand if those words were true. After all, she barely knew that man, who could easily lie to an inexperienced student. While thinking about this, she thought that this strange priest was hiding some secret. Suddenly, she saw in front of her a man who would hardly trust the young teacher. At first, she thought Theo was angry about her absence, but then she realized that it was not like that at all. The boy immediately hugged his friend tightly, deciding that she had been gone for a long time, and that she would only return in a week. He asked her never to leave him alone, and to let him know if she planned to go anywhere. For the first time in a long time, the boy didn't blame her, but just asked her not to scare him so much. However, she decided to calm him down quickly and asked him not to make a big fuss about it. Iris gently touched his face, reminding him that she had never intended to leave the shelter for a long time. After seeing them together, Thea decided that the girl could leave that place forever. And now that she had finally returned, he asked her to answer honestly why they had gone to the city center. Suddenly, he admitted that he couldn't live without Iris, and those words sounded somewhat special. With a smile on his face, the girl asked not to worry, because she would keep her promise and would be there. It was very fun to see Theo. He was really scared when they left him there alone. After a while, he decided to leave first, holding the new book firmly in his hands. Theo was not very happy with this decision, but he didn't behave the same way as before. While thinking about it, he suddenly realized how he should behave with Iris so that everything would turn out well. Seeing Frey's madness, it was clear that he would take advantage of any situation to drag her to the temple. But Iris kept taking care of him, so this definitely won't happen for now. By deciding to show only his weak sides, the boy intended to keep her close to him. He became softer every day, trying to smile more in Iris's presence. She assumed that in a couple of days, everything would return to normal, but several weeks had already passed since then. The situation remained the same, and suddenly something appeared that really surprised her. Theo had changed so much that he even smiled at Frey when attending private lessons. Smiling, the boy asked if everything was okay with his homework and if there were any serious errors. It seemed that after this, Frey became even colder towards him, not wanting to see such behavior. He didn't even hide his irritation, while Theo kept smiling constantly. It seemed as if both were playing a stupid game in which Theo managed to become the winner. Understanding this, Iris didn't want to pretend that everything was fine and that she didn't notice anything. Suddenly, the boy said he was a little tired and needed to take some time to rest a little. The atmosphere in the room changed drastically because the teacher understood that he left him no other choice. Addressing Iris, Mr. Frey asked her if she really needed time to rest more. Without understanding what was happening, she calmly asked Theo why he was behaving that way. She understood perfectly that he was doing it on purpose, but she was not at all tired of studying. The boy was a little annoyed with this answer, as she should have supported him. Looking her straight in the eyes, he admitted that he didn't want to hand her over to Mr. Frey. This answer was completely true, but the boy never went that far. After the lesson, he thanked the teacher for his time, slowly picking up his things. Looking at him with disdain, the young man understood that he had only ruined everyone's mood. Frey decided to say goodbye only to Iris, saying that they would meet at the next lesson. Realizing why he had turned only to her, Theo decided to see what he would do next. The idea that he had come to consider Frey differently was merely a fleeting illusion. Turning to Iris, the boy asked her if she wanted to stay there for a while and continue the lesson. He decided to stay with her, abruptly changing his mind about leaving the office and deciding to continue preparing for the exams. Looking at his face, the girl wanted to remind him of the most important thing, so that he wouldn't worry about anything. She touched his hand gently and told him that he shouldn't do that at all. Iris apologized for having worried him so much the last time by going to the city center. With a smile on her face, the young woman assured that she would give notice in advance if she decided to go anywhere. She told him to remember that she would never, under any circumstances, leave him alone. Gently hugging Theo, she warned him once again that she would protect him from any danger. She intended to always be by his side, even if the whole world started saying bad things about him. After a while, Miss Haley noticed her at the door, knowing very well that this was destined to happen. She knew that the girl would probably come looking for advice, and that place became a consultation room. With a smile on her face, she replied that the teacher always helps her solve her accumulated problems. After preparing fresh tea, the girl expected a new story that had to be discussed in detail. Unexpectedly, Iris admitted that the priest Frey had become true family to her. The last time they saw each other, during the preparation for the exams, he personally said these words. Miss Haley suggested that he could actually be a brother if he had come here just for her. In response, the girl said that he hadn't spoken about it so directly, but that she hadn't started a conversation about kinship. According to Haley, every person should have their own family, and this is absolutely fantastic news. Even if he's not a biological brother, she advised her not to isolate herself from Frey. At first, it didn't seem like he had a sister, and there was something else going on. Iris said that he probably just wanted to find his relatives when he saw her in the prayer hall. Be that as it may, the teacher did not consider him a bad person and did not discourage her from communicating with him. Sometimes he came to her office to have tea and talk a little about his student. Soon she will be able to see for herself how kind this priest is. Also, she will be able to understand if it is worth accepting into her family someone she just met. After receiving some advice from the teacher, the girl headed to her room. She was a little surprised because the pen found on the table had clearly been planted there by someone as a gift. She had never seen it before and realized that it was another secret gift from Mr. Frey. Lost in her thoughts, the girl seemed to sense that there was something unsaid in this whole story. Mentally, she asked Frey not to lie to her because she had always been very trusting and believed in people. She had a terrible dream all night, so her friends found Iris completely depressed. She explained that she simply didn't sleep enough and that she shouldn't pay too much attention to it. The girl asked how they would feel if a stranger suddenly wanted to be their friend. The kids looked at each other puzzled, unable to understand why she suddenly asked that. Margaret decided to recall the words of the director, who ordered never to talk to strangers. Patrick agreed and warned her not to talk too much to people she knew nothing about. After listening to their opinions, Iris reminded them that sometimes people just want to start a new social circle. As expected, Margaret advised simply calling the guards if this happened in real life. Realizing that this was not suitable for her, the girl was glad that at least they had real relatives. With a smile on her face, she said that they could also consider each other family, since they had known each other their whole lives. Unlike some students, they don't have such a big family and must stick together. Having said this, Margaret hugged her tightly, and Patrick decided to do the same. They were really a true family, who tried not to separate and helped each other in any difficulty. After a while, they arrived at the dining hall and continued discussing the topic of friendship. At that moment, Theo appeared next to them, smiling and asking them to join their cheerful conversation. The kids were a little surprised by his mood, because normally the boy was quite gloomy. The girl wanted to share the delicious sausage with him, hoping that Theo would not refuse. From the outside, it looked as if he had asked his owner for permission, and Theo was a normal dog. He understood that many of the students still considered him a domesticated animal that Iris had tamed. But the sausage was really very tasty, so he decided to eat it. After stroking his head, the girl praised him for his good behavior and was happy with his mood. Immediately after this, the boy saw several more offers because all the children wanted to share something with him. While accepting the treats, he kept thinking about something, as if he had some doubts about their sincerity. And yet, the first step had already been taken, and very soon Theo would become part of their great and friendly family. Of course, it was wrong for them to treat him like a pet, but little by little they will change their attitude. At that moment, the boys who hadn't liked Theo from the beginning entered the room. William turned to her and asked her why she kept covering up for the devil. In response, he said that his face looked more like a gorilla's than a normal person's. This phrase was very offensive, and William heard general laughter around him. Pointing at Theo, he declared loudly that he really was a demon child, as evidenced by his red eyes. Iris demanded that they not say such nonsense and not scare the children with various ridiculous inventions. She barely contained her anger, hoping that this conversation would not drag on too long. Unexpectedly, Theo decided not to stay on the sidelines and asked his girlfriend not to worry about anything. Looking at William, he continued to listen to that torrent of insults directed at him. But he had something completely different in mind. Instead of responding with aggression, a slight smile appeared on his face, and the boy did not respond to evil with evil. He understood that no one would expect such a reaction if they saw a radiant smile on his face. Only then did William realize, with surprise, that the provocations no longer worked, and he had become completely different. Theo just asked not to bother Iris anymore, and a divine and kind light emanated from him. Looking him in the eyes, the boy couldn't understand why he started smiling at people like that. Aisha could be proud of her friend because she had worked hard to teach him to be so polite. Meanwhile, William didn't want to stop and intended to continue with this conflict. He gestured with his hand and demanded that the damn demon stop mocking everyone and end his hypocrisy. At the last moment, Margaret called out loudly to William, begging him to stop and not do that. Preparing to fight back, the girl could pounce on him with her fists if this crazy fight continued. At that moment, she noticed how her friend easily caught the fist, without even changing his expression. Still smiling, Theo continued to remain in his place, silently observing his opponent's actions. In this way, he simply turned him into a laughingstock, because the boy couldn't do anything about it. At some point, he even started crying when he realized that now all the students in the orphanage would see him as a loser. Finally, he advised them not to protect the demon, because very soon they themselves would become his victims. The girl, pretending not to have heard anything, thanked him for the valuable advice and waved goodbye. No one believed that Theo was really a demon, and the boy was very surprised by such a reaction from the students. Thanking the kids for taking his side, Iris loudly ordered them to leave. William said that Theo had a strange power that they knew almost nothing about, and that he was in danger. He was sure he had sensed something demonic, and that his secret must be revealed immediately. To Iris, this statement seemed quite funny, since she had known this boy for many years. Getting a little closer to him, she asked him to repeat the words he had said about Theo. In response, William swore that he had seen his demonic essence with his own eyes, and that it was quite terrifying. She asked him to tell her a little more about what he meant by that strange entity. For a while the boy couldn't answer, as he himself didn't know what it was. Deciding to lighten the tense atmosphere a little, Evelyn asked what they had been discussing. As usual, she was the last to find out about everything, and was very curious about all kinds of gossip. Iris quickly silenced William and replied that they were discussing protection against demonic power. Previously, the girl was sure that she and William were not as close as they seemed now. Although she was just a child, Evelyn would never have fallen for such an obvious lie. Deciding to act on her intuition, Iris suddenly said that her friend would be the first to know the secret. Everyone else thought they were at odds with William, but in reality, that wasn't the case. In order not to forget valuable information, the girl started writing everything down in a notebook where she stored a lot of similar information. After this, she said goodbye loudly, wishing them a good day and a pleasant conversation. It was necessary to urgently find this notebook with gossip and burn it, otherwise the whole orphanage would find out the news. Suddenly the boy asked if Iris really had that opinion. He started acting a little strange, as if he felt ashamed of his words about friendly relationships. After a while, she decided to take a short walk, although she felt incredibly tired. Upon going out to the courtyard, she suddenly noticed that Theo was surrounded by children who were talking to him very friendly. The boy was not behaving in a distant manner at all, and, on the contrary, was constantly smiling in response to all the compliments. He seemed so kind, as if he had never had difficulty communicating with people. This is probably why William was so surprised when he first saw Theo being so friendly. Iris was no less surprised, because she didn't even have to be there to make sure he got along with the other students. Turning to look at her, Theo was a little surprised to realize that she had been watching him from afar for a long time. He made a friendly gesture with his hand, inviting her to sit on a bench and rest a little after class. They sat in silence for a while, Iris trying to figure out what had caused these changes. She was sure that the children would start insulting him again, and Theo would start showing aggression in response. However, now, seeing their friendship, the girl was completely calm regarding Theo. She was very happy that the children no longer considered him a demon and didn't even pay attention to his red eyes. With a smile on her face, the girl said that he had made great progress and that from now on everything would be even better. In response, Theo thanked her, because all the success in communication was achieved only with her help. The boy was really very sweet, even when there were no other students around. It was strange, but he didn't like it when someone stroked his head and he would turn away abruptly. Looking at her, the boy said that Iris was the main reason why he was trying to contain his aggression. He wanted to be like her in everything and be with her forever, even in the future. Iris was very moved by this confession, reminding him that the image of a sweet boy suited him very well. The next day, she decided not to miss the exam preparation and returned to Frey's office. The boy greeted the teacher with a smile on his face, not wanting to continue the previous fight. The morning conversation had really lifted his spirits, and Theo was in a very good mood. Mr. Frey didn't seem to like it, as the young man continued to behave quite reservedly. After looking him in the eyes, the teacher advised him to quit the lessons if they seemed too difficult to him. Smiling, he reminded him that he and Iris had an internal connection and understood each other perfectly. The words about some kind of connection seemed quite funny to him, and Theo asked to tell it in more detail. She felt that now she had been given the floor, although the girl was not prepared for it. She did not want to come between them and always tried to resolve this conflict amicably. However, they wanted to hear her opinion, as if she were the judge between two people. After asking them to stop fighting each other, the girl just wanted to start preparing. She suggested focusing on studying, instead of wasting time on silly games. It's quite exhausting to constantly deal with those who haven't yet left childhood behind. After her studies, she decided to ask directly how that conflict with Teacher Frey should be understood. He definitely knew what was going on, so Iris demanded that he not act like a clueless child. The boy looked at her face in silence for a while, trying to remain as sweet as ever. To make the conversation a little more pleasant, she took a rich candy for Theo out of her pocket. Without saying a word, the girl put it directly into his mouth, promising him that he would like it very much. Curiously, the boy even managed to sigh with the candy in his mouth, deciding not to answer the first question. He didn't want to talk about his relationship with the teacher, because it would only worsen his own relationship. Suddenly, he remembered the sausages, croissants, and strawberry jam that Iris had given him previously. Looking at him with surprise, she couldn't understand why he remembered that now. It turned out that he knew her preferences very well and wanted to give her a little surprise. The boy explained that all this time she had been trying to achieve his good, but that he couldn't give her anything valuable in return. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembered that he only occasionally invited her to eat his favorite snacks. The last sentence was especially sweet because Theo spoke of her with great sincerity. In response, Iris thanked them for their help and said that they really enjoyed the snacks. However, she warned him that he shouldn't try so hard and that she didn't expect anything in return. Suddenly, Theo's behavior changed dramatically, and he slowly placed his hand on her shoulder. Hugging his friend, the boy asked her never to abandon him. Otherwise, he would become the loneliest person in the world. No matter what happens, she must always be there, just as she is right now. For some time, the girl couldn't understand why he had constant mood swings. Pushing him aside a little, Iris reminded him that there was no reason to doubt him. Theo returned her smile and apologized for the words that came out completely by accident. It is difficult to say which of the two Theos was the real one, and if he had really changed so much. At first glance, the boy was quite pleasant and treated her like an old friend. He tried not to show aggression, even when the conversation turned to unpleasant topics. At that moment, another orphanage resident appeared behind him, after having been watching from afar for a long time. Iris was surprised to realize that Theo had made another very interesting friend. She was considered the most beautiful girl in the orphanage, and it was strange that Grace chose him. Her smile only indicated that she and Theo had been friends for a long time, and they were not strangers at all. Getting a little closer, Grace apologized if she had accidentally interrupted the conversation. Grace wanted to meet in person Theo's friend, whom the boy talked about so much. She was glad that a conversation started immediately between them and that no one objected to the communication. Even at that moment, Theo began to guess that it was no coincidence that she had decided to appear right now. He felt that she didn't care about all those rumors about the boy being the son of a demon. In any case, it is good to have another friend who is quite friendly to him. Suddenly, Grace asked to leave them alone for a minute if it wouldn't be too much of a burden for Iris. The request was unexpected, although the girl tried not to show that she was surprised by it. After saying goodbye, she wished them a pleasant conversation and decided to leave them alone for a while. Returning to the bench, she began to wait patiently for them to finish their personal conversation. From a distance, it looked as if they were very close and had known each other for many years. Lost in her thoughts, Iris couldn't remember Theo ever telling her about his new friend. After a while, she suddenly felt someone approaching from behind and gently touching her with their hand. It was Evelyn, asking why the girl had decided to be all alone all this time. She had never seen her friend so scared, although she tried to pretend that nothing had happened. Looking back, Evelyn realized why her best friend's expression had changed so abruptly. The girl demanded that she come to her senses, because at that moment, a completely unknown student was next to Theo. In response, Iris said that he should have more friends so as not to feel excluded. She even enjoyed seeing how bravely Theo interacted with people and didn't even think about showing aggression. Previously, Evelyn believed they were together and that their relationship was more than just friendship. Realizing that this information had to be written down immediately, the girl quickly took her notebook. After reading the last entries, she suddenly realized that this student's name was Grace, and she often asked about Theo. Iris introduced her friend to all the other children at the orphanage and never left him for long. But now, for some reason, she closed her eyes when the stranger decided to start a personal conversation with him. It was difficult for Evelyn to understand what was really happening between them and what kind of relationship they had. She remembered that before, Iris was the only person the boy always smiled at. Looking sternly at her face, Evelyn said that there had been a special relationship between them for a long time. In response, the girl stated that Theo was like a thumb to her and that everything else was complete nonsense. This means she couldn't leave him alone, constantly feeling responsible for that person. This answer didn't seem entirely convincing, and Evelyn decided that she simply loved Theo. She supposed she could call it whatever she wanted, but Iris had always felt something for him. Of course, she started to deny this nonsense, although the girl was sure of her version. Her feelings should never be anything more than friendly sympathy and a desire to help. The girl kept insisting that they had been normal friends from the beginning. But Evelyn, being a child, didn't question her too much, deciding to just feel in silence. And still, she couldn't accept the fact that at that moment, Theo was in the company of another girl. She saw that they had been away from everyone for a long time, and such communication definitely could not be mistaken for simple friendship. Deciding that this situation was unacceptable, she took her friend by the hand. Evelyn couldn't just stand by and watch, while another girl took Theo. Approaching, at first she behaved quite friendly, smiling sweetly at the stranger. However, her expression changed dramatically when Evelyn looked her straight in the eyes. Introducing herself as Iris's best friend, she apologized for bothering her. Standing in front of Grace, the girl decided to say something that would make her understand one simple thing. No matter how long she tried to get close to Theo, Evelyn would not allow that to happen. Standing firm in her stance, she reminded her that she could never replace Iris. She thought the phrase sounded brilliant and had to be written down immediately. Having said everything she wanted, the girl hurried away so as not to be distracted from the important conversation. In the end, she simply let Iris clean up the mess she had caused there. Smiling, the girl said that her friend had misunderstood the situation and that she shouldn't be angry with her. She always supported all her acquaintances, believing that every person should have friends. Iris asked not to take it too seriously, and that Grace could continue communicating with Theo. Looking at her friend, she suddenly realized that the boy had a different opinion on this matter. He declared directly that he no longer wanted to be friends with Grace, and that one friend was enough for him. These words left both girls stunned, who didn't expect such a harsh statement. The girl demanded an apology, because no one has the right to say such offensive things. Grace couldn't hold back her tears as she asked him why he refused to be her friend. It was really too cruel, and Iris had tried for a long time to teach him courtesy. Taking her by the hand, the boy intended to end this by finding another place to walk. As a result, Grace was left completely alone, still not understanding what she had done wrong. After a while, the girl stopped abruptly, not wanting to leave it like that. Pulling her hand away, she intended to express her opinion on what had happened. Iris asked him why he was speaking in that tone and why he hurt Grace so much. He really hurt her feelings, but continued to act as if nothing had happened. Iris explained that even if he didn't want to be friends, you couldn't say those things to people. At least he could have given a reason before saying those words. If Theo continues to be so rude, none of the children will agree to be his friend. Agreeing with his friend, he couldn't understand why he should worry about other people. No one other than Iris cared about his own destiny, and Theo decided to do the same. He didn't agree that his relationship with Grace would have any impact on his future. If you didn't know what happened there, the boy seemed quite kind and friendly, but realizing that he was only making it worse, the girl asked him to reflect on his behavior. The inability to sympathize with another person's feelings is a very big flaw. She begged him never to do that again. Otherwise, her own opinion would also change. Iris began to feel that her presence was having a bad influence on Theo. Suddenly, the boy announced that he was willing to apologize to Grace, and that he would do it right now. For Iris's sake, he was willing to do anything and promised to make peace with that girl. Having said this, he headed towards the place where the girl was still sitting alone. Hearing someone's voice, she looked up abruptly and saw Theo's outstretched hand. Her face lit up immediately, as if she hadn't been crying at all until that second. Accepting his apologies, the girl took his hand, and a welcoming smile appeared on her face. Back home, Iris thanked him for this act, believing he did the right thing. The next day, they met Grace again, and the girl invited them to go for a little walk. Iris told them to go ahead, hoping that the incident wouldn't happen again this time. Soon Grace began to visit them every day, offering to have lunch together. At that moment, Iris began to realize that she really had feelings for him. Although she began to feel abandoned, she had to accept it. From the outside, it seemed that both of them were very compatible, so Iris didn't want to get in the way. A few days later, the children received an important task. They had to sort books from the library. Some of them didn't even know that there were such interesting books in the shelter. It was Father Frey who bought all these books, constituting a wonderful gift for the orphanage. Shortly after, he asked to gather them so that no book would be lost. Noticing Iris, the priest said that he had seen her reading books to the children of the younger group. As a token of appreciation, he intended to give a small gift, although he had already given enough. After thinking for a bit, the young man admitted that it was just an excuse to go for a walk. His confession was quite a surprise, and the girl didn't know what to say. To begin with, he suggested that she change her clothes while he finished working with the books. Apparently, he enjoyed spending time in her company very much. As she left the room, she thought that this priest just wanted to have a family. At that moment, she met Theo again, who asked her where she planned to go. With a smile on her face, the girl replied that she wanted to go for a walk with the priest. Without even listening to Iris, he demanded to know why she had accepted this. Theo seemed quite scary again and didn't want to let her go for a walk. Grace said that the two were very close and that they planned outings together. Theo decided to join them, hoping that Priest Frey would not object. Looking at him, Iris couldn't understand why everyone was obsessed with being friends with her. She suggested asking the priest directly, since he is the one paying for the food. However, first you must make peace with him. Otherwise, the walk will end in a fight again. Watching them from the side, Grace felt very sad because they wanted to leave her alone again. After a while, Theo himself went to the priest and offered to become good friends. Iris assumed everything would be exactly like that, but hoped for the best. To her surprise, a smile appeared on Frey's face, and he was happy with the offer. From the outside, it looked as if they were performing a strange, mandatory ritual. Having quickly sealed their friendship with a handshake, they sincerely wanted to separate as soon as possible. Iris really wanted to make peace between them, but it was getting harder each time. A bad feeling arose in her soul, and she regretted having told Theo about the walk. The priest commented with a smile that the outfit suited Iris very well, as if it had been made especially for her. Grace tried to maintain a friendly atmosphere, reminding them that the weather was absolutely wonderful. However, everyone understood that Frey was only paying attention to Iris, as if they had something in common. Sitting in the carriage, he offered to bring her a warm blanket if she felt a little cold. Although it was indeed a little cold in the carriage, she always enjoyed the winter season. Their group was probably the most incompatible in the world, and it wasn't worth going around in that company. Having chosen a small establishment, Iris asked with a smile if Theo and Grace were alone. The question was quite simple, but Theo didn't want to talk about those topics. The girl admitted that she was very happy to see them together and hoped they would be great friends. Upon hearing these words, Grace's face changed dramatically, unable to believe that they were sincere. Iris still believed that a person should have many friends. That's why she asked, apologizing if she had accidentally offended someone. With a smile on his face, the boy declared that Iris would never stop being his best friend. Addressing the priest, he told him that he could never become truly friends with her. There should only be one best friend. That's why the boy was sure of his words. He kept trying to get under Frey's skin, knowing very well that it was unpleasant for him to hear that. As expected, the usual tea party turned into a big fight again.